Lucas Reed never imagined his life would come down to this, signing a contract to marry a stranger just to save his dying daughter. Across from him sat Aria Bennett, cold and calculating, offering him a deal wrapped in desperation. 6 months of pretend marriage in exchange for the money that could keep his little girl alive. But what starts as a simple transaction becomes something far more dangerous when real feelings crash into fake vows, and a public betrayal forces them both to choose between safety and truth. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. The smell of cedar and sweat hung thick in Lucas Reed's workshop, clinging to every surface like an unwelcome guest that refused to leave. He ran the sander across the tabletop one more time, watching the dust spiral into the shaft of afternoon light cutting through the grimy window. The grain was coming out clean, smooth under his calloused fingers, but all he could think about was the stack of medical bills sitting on his kitchen counter, each one stamped with red letters that might as well have screamed failure. His phone buzzed in his back pocket. He ignored it. Probably another creditor, another voice asking for money he didn't have. "Dad?" Lucas looked up. His daughter Mia stood in the doorway of the workshop, her small frame silhouetted against the brighter light of the house beyond. She was 7 years old, with his dark hair and her mother's bright eyes, eyes that had grown dimmer over the past 6 months as the treatments took more and more out of her. "Hey, sweetheart." He set down the sander and crossed to her, wiping his hands on his jeans. "You're supposed to be resting." "I'm not tired." But even as she said it, she swayed slightly and Lucas caught her elbow. "I wanted to see what you were making." "Just a table for the Hendersons, nothing fancy." "It's pretty." He smiled, though it hurt. Everything hurt these days. "You think so?" "Yeah." She leaned against him, and he could feel how light she'd become, how fragile. "Can we go to the park tomorrow?" "We'll see, okay? Depends on how you feel." "I'll feel good, I promise." Lucas kissed the top of her head, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. "Go on back inside, I'll be done soon, and we can have dinner." She shuffled away, moving like someone 3 times her age, and Lucas felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the one that came every time he watched her struggle with something that should have been effortless. The doctors had been clear. Without the next round of treatment, Mia wouldn't make it another year. And the next round cost more than Lucas would make in 5 years of building furniture in this cramped workshop. He went back to sanding, but his hands were shaking now. The phone buzzed again. This time he pulled it out, ready to send whoever it was straight to voicemail. But the number on the screen wasn't one he recognized. He hesitated, then answered. "Lucas Reed?" The voice was female, clipped and efficient, the kind that came from someone who didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Yeah, who's this?" "My name is Aria Bennett. I have a proposition for you, and I'd like to meet in person to discuss it." Lucas frowned. "I don't know you." "Not yet, but I know you. I know you're a single father with a sick daughter. I know you're drowning in medical debt, and I know you're running out of options." His grip tightened on the phone. "How the hell do you know all that?" "Does it matter?" Her tone didn't shift, still calm and controlled. "What matters is that I can help you, if you're willing to listen. I'm not interested in scams." "This isn't a scam, Mr. Reed. It's a business arrangement, one that could solve both of our problems." "I don't have any problems you can solve." "Your daughter needs treatment you can't afford. I'd say that's a problem." Lucas's jaw clenched. "You've got some nerve." "I'm offering you a solution," she interrupted, her voice cutting through his anger like a blade. "Meet me tomorrow. 1 hour of your time. If you don't like what I have to say, you walk away and never hear from me again. And if I don't meet you, then you go back to hoping for a miracle that isn't coming." He wanted to hang up, wanted to tell this stranger to go to hell and leave him alone. But the stack of bills on his counter flashed through his mind, and Mia's pale face, and the way the oncologist had looked at him last week when Lucas asked if there were any other options. "Where is he?" said finally. "Bennett Tower, downtown. Tomorrow at 2. I work tomorrow. Take the afternoon off. Trust me, Mr. Reed, this will be worth it." She hung up before he could respond. Lucas stood there in the middle of his workshop, phone still pressed to his ear, listening to dead air. Bennett Tower. He knew the name. Everyone in the city did. It was one of those glass monoliths that scraped the sky, The kind of building where people in $1,000 suits made decisions that affected lives they'd never see. What the hell did someone from that world want with him? What? The next day, Lucas found himself standing in the lobby of Bennett Tower, feeling like he'd wandered onto the wrong set. Everything gleamed, polished marble floors, chrome fixtures, walls of glass that made the city beyond look like a postcard. People moved through the space with the kind of purpose that came from knowing exactly where they belonged. Lucas didn't belong here. He wore his best jeans and a button-down shirt that was only slightly wrinkled, but next to the tailored suits and designer dresses flowing past him, he might as well have been wearing rags. A woman at the reception desk glanced at him, her expression hovering somewhere between polite and suspicious. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Aria Bennett." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "Yeah, 2:00. She tapped something into her computer, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the keys. After a moment, she nodded. 32nd floor. Elevators are to your right." Lucas followed her gesture to a bank of elevators that looked like they belonged in a spaceship. He stepped into one, pressed the button for the 32nd floor, and felt his stomach drop as the thing shot upward fast enough to make his ears pop. When the doors opened, he stepped into a reception area that was somehow even more intimidating than the lobby. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that made everything look small and insignificant. A young man sat behind a sleek desk, his smile professional and empty. "Mr. Reed?" "That's me." "Ms. Bennett is expecting you. Right this way." He led Lucas down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than his house, then stopped at a frosted glass door. He knocked once, opened it, and gestured for Lucas to enter. The office beyond was massive. More windows, more art, a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of black stone. And behind that desk sat Aria Bennett. She was younger than Lucas had expected, maybe 26, 27, with sharp features and dark hair pulled back in a way that made her look older, more severe. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Lucas's truck, and when she looked up at him, her eyes were the color of steel. "Mr. Reed, thank you for coming." She gestured to the chair across from her desk. "Please sit." Lucas sat, feeling the leather conform to him in a way that was almost uncomfortable in its luxury. "You wanted to talk." "I did." She folded her hands on the desk, her posture perfect. "Let me be direct. I need a husband, temporarily. And you need money for your daughter's treatment." Lucas blinked. "Excuse me?" "A marriage. Legal and binding, but with clear parameters and a defined end date. 6 months. In exchange, I'll cover all of your daughter's medical expenses, past, present, and future, as well as provide you with a monthly stipend of $10,000. He stared at her, waiting for the punchline. When none came, he laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You're serious?" "Completely." "Why?" "That's not your concern." "The hell it's not. You're asking me to marry you." "I'm offering you a contract," she corrected. "Nothing more." Lucas leaned back in the chair, studying her. Up close, he could see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers pressed just a little too hard against each other. Whatever this was about, it wasn't some whim. She needed this. "Why me?" he asked. "Because you're perfect for what I need. You're not connected to my world. You have a reason to keep this arrangement professional, and you're desperate enough to consider it." "That's cold. It's honest." "And what happens when your 6 months are up?" "We divorce. Quietly and amicably. You walk away with enough money to keep your daughter healthy and give her the life she deserves. I walk away with what I need. Everyone wins." Lucas shook his head. "This is insane." "Is it? Or is it a solution to a problem you can't solve any other way?" He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was out of her mind and walk out of this ridiculous office. But then he thought of Mia, thought of the way she could barely make it through a day without needing to rest, thought of the oncologist's carefully neutral expression when he said the words palliative care. "What's the catch?" Lucas asked quietly. "No catch. Just rules. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. We maintain separate lives as much as possible. No emotional entanglement. No romantic expectations. We present as a married couple in public when necessary, but in private, we're strangers." "Strangers who live together?" "You'd move into my home, yes. It would look suspicious otherwise. Lucas rubbed his face with both hands. This was crazy. Every part of him knew it was crazy. But the money, Christ, the money would change everything. Mia could get the treatment she needed. He could stop lying awake at night wondering if he'd have to choose between keeping the lights on and keeping his daughter alive. I need to think about it, he said. You have 24 hours. Arya pulled a folder from her desk and slid it across to him. Here's the contract. Read it. If you agree, sign it and bring it back tomorrow. If not, we never speak again. Lucas took the folder, his hands feeling numb. This is really happening. Only if you want it to. He stood, the folder clutched in his hand like a lifeline or an anchor. I'll let you know. Mr. Reed? She looked up at him, and for just a moment he thought he saw something flicker in those steel-colored eyes. Uncertainty, maybe. Or fear. But it was gone before he could be sure. I hope you say yes. Lucas didn't go straight home. Instead, he drove to the park where he used to take Mia before she got sick, before everything fell apart. He sat on a bench overlooking the playground, the folder resting on his knees, and watched kids chase each other across the wood chips. He opened the contract. The language was dense, full of legal terms he barely understood, but the essentials were clear enough. 6 months of marriage, complete financial support for Mia's treatment, a monthly stipend, separate bedrooms, no romantic or sexual relationship, a clean divorce at the end. It was all there in black and white, clinical and cold. Lucas thought about his daughter's smile, about the way she used to run through this very playground, fearless and full of life, about the way she looked now, tired and scared and trying so hard to be brave for him. He thought about his pride, about what his parents would say if they were still alive, about what it meant to turn his life into a transaction. Then he thought about what it meant to let Mia die because he was too stubborn to accept help, even if that help came wrapped in the strangest package he'd ever seen. He pulled out his phone and called the number Arya had given him. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Reed? I have conditions, Lucas said. A pause. Then, I'm listening? Mia, my daughter. She can't know this is fake. As far as she's concerned, this is real. I won't lie to her about everything, but I won't let her think her father's marriage is some kind of business deal. Agreed. And if at any point this starts to hurt her, emotionally, the deal's off. I don't care what the contract says. Understood. One more thing. You stay out of my workshop. That space is mine. Fine. Lucas closed his eyes, feeling like he was standing at the edge of a cliff. Okay, I'll do it. Bring the signed contract tomorrow. Same time, same place. We'll handle the legal formalities immediately. Arya? Yes? Why are you really doing this? The silence stretched so long he thought she'd hung up. Then quietly, she said, because I'm desperate too. The line went dead. Lucas told Mia that night over dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, her favorite. She sat across from him at their small kitchen table, picking at her sandwich, and he tried to find the right words. I met someone, he said finally. Mia looked up, her eyes curious. Someone? He almost smiled. Yeah. Her name's Arya. Is she nice? Lucas thought about the cold, efficient woman in the glass tower. She's different. Different how? She's smart, successful, and she wants to help us. Help us how? This was the hard part. Lucas set down his spoon and reached across the table to take Mia's hand. She wants to marry me, sweetheart. Mia's eyes went wide. Really? Really. And if we get married, she can help make sure you get all the medicine you need to feel better. Is that why you're doing it? Because of me? The question hit him like a punch. No, he lied. I'm doing it because I care about her. Mia studied him with the unnerving perception kids sometimes had, like she could see right through him. Do you love her? Lucas's throat tightened. It's complicated, Mia. That's what grown-ups say when they don't want to answer. I know this is a lot to take in. I think it's good, Mia said quietly. You do? Yeah. You've been sad for a long time, Dad, since Mom left. Maybe Arya can make you happy again. Lucas felt something crack inside his chest. He'd tried so hard to keep his grief hidden from Mia, to be strong for her, but of course she'd seen through it. Kids always did. Maybe she can. he said, though he didn't believe it. The wedding happened fast. Too fast for Lucas to really process what was happening. 3 days after he signed the contract, he found himself standing in a courthouse in a suite Arya had bought for him, watching a judge recite words that should have meant something but felt hollow. Arya wore a simple white dress, elegant and understated, her hair down for once. She looked beautiful in a distant, untouchable way. When the judge told Lucas he could kiss his bride, Arya leaned in and pressed her lips to his for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to satisfy the legality, short enough to make it clear this meant nothing. Mia was there, wearing a pink dress and holding a small bouquet of flowers. She smiled through the whole thing, and that smile was the only thing that kept Lucas from walking out. Afterward, Arya's driver took them to her home, a sprawling modern house on the outskirts of the city, all glass and clean lines and intimidating open space. Mia stared up at it with wide eyes. "We're going to live here?" she whispered. "For a while," Lucas said. Arya led them inside, her heels clicking on the polished concrete floors. "Your rooms are upstairs. I've had them prepared." "Rooms?" Lucas asked. "Plural. You and Mia each have your own. Mine is on the opposite side of the house." "Of course. Separate lives." A woman appeared from somewhere deeper in the house, middle-aged, kind-faced, wearing an apron. "This is Helen," Arya said. "She manages the household. If you need anything, ask her." Helen smiled warmly at Mia. "I made cookies this morning. Would you like some?" Mia looked at Lucas, who nodded. She followed Helen toward what Lucas assumed was the kitchen, leaving him alone with his new wife. Arya turned to him, her expression neutral. "The master bedroom is down that hall. Yours is upstairs, second door on the left. Mia's is across from it. Helen will show you where everything is. I have work to do." Arya, "What?" Lucas didn't know what he wanted to say. "Thank you? This is weird. Are you okay?" All of it seemed wrong, so he just shook his head. "Nothing." She studied him for a moment, something unreadable flickering across her face. Then she turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing through the cavernous house. Lucas stood there in the entryway of a home that wasn't his, married to a woman he didn't know, and wondered what the hell he'd just done. The first week was an exercise in awkwardness. Lucas and Mia moved through Arya's house like guests who'd overstayed their welcome, careful not to touch anything, afraid to make too much noise. Arya was gone most of the time, early mornings at her office, late nights doing God knew what, and when she was home, she retreated to her side of the house. They barely spoke. Mia, though, adjusted faster than Lucas expected. She liked Helen, who doted on her with the warmth of a grandmother. She explored the house with cautious wonder, discovering rooms Lucas hadn't even noticed. A library, a home gym, a room that was just windows filled with plants. "Dad, there's a pool!" she called one afternoon, her voice echoing through the house. Lucas found her standing on the back patio, staring at an infinity pool that seemed to spill into the horizon. He'd seen it when they first arrived, but hadn't really registered it. "Pretty cool, huh?" he said. "Can I swim?" "Maybe when you're feeling stronger." Her face fell, and Lucas hated himself for it. But the truth was, Mia was still too weak for something like that. The treatments hadn't started yet. Arya's doctors needed to run their own tests first. And until they did, Mia was still fragile. "Soon," Lucas promised, knowing it might be a lie. That night, Arya came home earlier than usual. Lucas was in the kitchen, trying to figure out how to use the espresso machine that looked like it belonged in a spaceship when she walked in. "You're here," he said, surprised. "I live here." "I know, I just mean—" He stopped, frustrated. "Never mind." Arya set her briefcase on the counter and looked at him. "How's Mia?" "Okay, tired." "The doctors will start treatment next week. They're optimistic." "That's good." Lucas hesitated. "Thank you for that." "It's part of our agreement." "Still, thank you." She nodded, a tiny acknowledgement, and turned to leave. "Arya, wait." She paused, her back to him. "This doesn't have to be so—" Lucas searched for the word. "Cold. We're living together. We don't have to be enemies." "We're not enemies, Mr. Reed." "Lucas. You can call me Lucas." She turned, and for a moment he thought she might actually soften, but her expression remained neutral, controlled. "Lucas, then. And you're right. We don't have to be enemies. But we also don't have to be friends." This is easier if we keep it simple. Easier for who? For both of us. I don't think it's easy for anyone. Arya's jaw tightened and Lucas saw that flicker again, the crack in the armor. You don't know anything about me, she said quietly. Don't pretend you do. I'm not pretending anything. I'm just saying we don't have to make this harder than it already is. Then follow the rules, keep your distance, and we'll both get through this just fine. She left before he could respond, her footsteps fading into the vastness of the house. Lucas stood there alone, the espresso machine hissing softly beside him, and wondered if 6 months was going to feel like 6 years. But something shifted after that night. Not dramatically. Arya didn't suddenly become warm or open, but the ice thawed just a little. She started eating dinner at home more often, though she rarely spoke during the meals. She asked about Mia's treatment, about how Lucas was adjusting. Small things, careful things. And then Mia got involved. It started innocently enough. Mia, bored one Saturday afternoon while Lucas worked in the garage, Arya had cleared out for him to use as a makeshift workshop, wandered into Arya's side of the house. Lucas found out about it when he went looking for his daughter and heard voices coming from the master bedroom. He approached cautiously, not wanting to intrude but needing to make sure Mia wasn't bothering Arya. What he saw through the half-open door stopped him cold. Arya was sitting on the floor, actually sitting on the floor, her perfect posture abandoned, with Mia beside her. They were looking at something on a tablet, and Mia was laughing. And this one is when Dad tried to build a treehouse, Mia said, pointing at the screen. He fell off the ladder and broke his arm. That sounds like something he'd do, Arya said, and there was something in her voice Lucas had never heard before. Amusement. Actual, genuine amusement. He's kind of clumsy, Mia said, but he's really good at building stuff. He made my whole bed by himself. It has drawers and everything. That's impressive. He's the best dad ever. Arya was quiet for a moment, then softly, You're lucky to have him. I know. Lucas backed away before they could see him, his chest tight. He didn't know what to make of what he'd just witnessed. Arya Bennett, cold, calculating, untouchable. Arya Bennett, sitting on the floor with his daughter, looking at photos and almost smiling. It didn't fit the woman he'd married, didn't fit the contract they'd signed. After that, Mia sought Arya out more often. She'd knock on her door in the evenings, asking questions about Arya's work, about the city, about things Lucas couldn't answer. And Arya, despite her rules about distance, never turned her away. Lucas watched it happen, this slow, strange thawing, and didn't know if he should be grateful or terrified. One night, about 3 weeks into the arrangement, Lucas woke to the sound of voices downstairs. He checked his phone, 2 a.m. He climbed out of bed and made his way down, following the sound to the kitchen. Arya was there, standing by the counter in pajamas, actual pajamas, not the silk nightgown he'd half expected. And Mia was sitting at the island, a glass of milk in front of her. Can't sleep? Lucas asked. Mia shook her head. Bad dream. I heard her in the hallway, Arya said quietly. I offered her some warm milk. Lucas crossed to his daughter, brushing her hair back from her face. You okay now? Yeah, Arya was telling me about when she was little. Lucas looked at Arya, surprised. She'd never talked about herself. Not once. Really? Just stories, Arya said, her tone dismissive. But there was color in her cheeks, a faint pink that suggested embarrassment. She lived in a big house too, Mia said. But she said it wasn't as nice as this one. Mia, Lucas said gently, it's late. You should get back to bed. Can Arya tuck me in? The question hung in the air, awkward and loaded. Lucas started to say no, to tell Mia that Arya probably had work to do. But Arya spoke first. Of course. She followed Mia upstairs, and Lucas stood in the kitchen, listening to their footsteps fade. When Arya came back down 10 minutes later, she looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the late hour. She's asleep, Arya said. Thank you. She's a good kid. Yeah, she is. Arya poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter, staring at nothing. Lucas had never seen her like this, unguarded, almost vulnerable. Can I ask you something? He said. Depends on the question. Why did you really need this marriage? Not the business reason, the real reason. Arya's grip on the glass tightened. For a long moment, Lucas thought she wouldn't answer, then quietly, "My family. They control everything, my trust fund, my position in the company, my entire life. And they were about to force me into an engagement with someone they chose, someone I can't stand. This was the only way out." Lucas processed that. "So you bought yourself a husband to avoid an arranged marriage?" "In essence, yes." "That's pretty drastic." "So is letting someone else decide the rest of your life." He couldn't argue with that. "And when the 6 months are up, what happens then?" "I'll have control of my trust fund. I can sever ties with my family, run the company division they gave me on my own terms, be free. And me?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Lucas saw something raw in her eyes. "You'll have your daughter's health and enough money to build the life you want. That was the deal." "Right, the deal." They stood there in the quiet kitchen, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down between them. Lucas wanted to ask more. About her family, about the man she'd avoided, about why she looked so damn sad right now. But he didn't, because the rules said to keep his distance, and he'd already crossed too many lines tonight. "Get some sleep," Arya said finally. "We have that charity gala next week. We need to look convincing." "Right, the gala." She left without another word, and Lucas stayed in the kitchen until the sun came up, wondering when this temporary arrangement had started to feel permanent. The gala was Lucas's first real introduction to Arya's world, and he hated it immediately. The venue was some grand ballroom downtown, dripping with chandeliers and filled with people who looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Lucas wore the tuxedo Arya had arranged for him, feeling like an imposter in someone else's life. Arya, though, moved through the crowd with easy confidence, shaking hands and making small talk with the kind of grace that came from a lifetime of practice. She kept Lucas close, her hand resting lightly on his arm, playing the role of devoted wife so convincingly that he almost believed it himself. "Smile," she murmured as they approached a cluster of older men in expensive suits. "And let me do the talking." Lucas smiled, nodded, shook hands when prompted. The men talked about stocks and mergers and things Lucas didn't understand, and Arya responded with the kind of sharp intelligence that made it clear she belonged here. He was just arm candy, a prop in her performance. It should have bothered him. Maybe it did. But mostly he was just trying not to trip over his own feet. Then, halfway through the evening, a woman approached, tall, elegant, with Arya's same sharp features and cold eyes. She looked at Lucas like he was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "Arya," the woman said. "Who's this?" Arya's hand tightened on Lucas's arm. "Mother, this is my husband, Lucas Reed." The word husband landed like a bomb. The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or fury. It was hard to tell. "Your husband," she repeated, her voice flat. "How interesting. You didn't mention you were getting married." "It happened quickly." "Clearly." The woman's gaze raked over Lucas, assessing and dismissing him in one sweep. "And what is it you do, Mr. Reed?" "I'm a carpenter," Lucas said, keeping his voice even. "How quaint." Arya's jaw tightened. "Lucas builds beautiful custom furniture. He's very talented." "I'm sure he is." The woman's smile was sharp enough to cut. "We'll discuss this later, Arya. Privately." She swept away, leaving a cold wake behind her. Lucas looked at Arya, whose face had gone carefully blank. "That was your mother?" "Unfortunately." "She seems warm." Arya almost laughed. Almost. "She's many things. Warm isn't one of them." "Is she going to be a problem?" "Yes." Arya took a breath, straightening her shoulders. "But not tonight. Tonight we stick to the plan. Smile, play the part, and get through this." Lucas nodded, but the encounter left a sour taste in his mouth. He'd known Arya's family was the reason behind all this, but seeing it firsthand, seeing the way her mother looked at him, the way Arya tensed at her presence, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. This wasn't just a contract. It was a war, and Lucas had just stepped onto the battlefield. The drive home from the gala was silent except for the hum of the engine and the occasional swish of tires on wet pavement. Rain had started halfway through the event, turning the city streets into rivers of reflected light. Lucas sat in the passenger seat of Arya's sleek black sedan, watching droplets race each other down the window. while Arya gripped the steering wheel with both hands, her knuckles white. You don't have to white-knuckle it, Lucas said finally. The car's not going anywhere. Arya's grip loosened slightly. Sorry, I'm just pissed off? Something like that. Lucas turned to look at her. In the dim light from the dashboard, her face looked drawn, tired in a way that went deeper than one long evening. Your mom's a piece of work. That's putting it mildly. How long until she figures out this whole thing is fake? Arya's jaw tightened. She already suspects. She's not stupid, but suspecting and proving are two different things. And when she proves it, then we deal with it. Arya's voice was flat, final, like she was slamming a door. But not tonight. They pulled into the driveway of the glass house, and Lucas noticed lights on in the upstairs windows. Helen had stayed late to watch Mia, and judging by the glow, his daughter was still awake despite the hour. Inside, they found Mia curled up on the couch in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, watching some animated movie Lucas had seen 100 times. Helen sat in the adjacent chair, knitting something that might have been a scarf. How was the party? Mia asked, her eyes bright despite the late hour. Boring, Lucas said, loosening his bow tie. Lots of people talking about things that don't matter. Did you dance? Lucas glanced at Arya, who was already halfway to the stairs. No, sweetheart. No dancing. That's sad. When people get married, they're supposed to dance. We'll dance another time. Mia seemed to accept this, turning back to her movie. Helen stood, gathering her knitting. She had dinner and her medicine, no problems. Thank you, Helen, Arya said from the staircase. Her voice was softer when she spoke to the older woman, less guarded. You can head home. After Helen left, Lucas sat down next to Mia, and she immediately leaned against him, her small body fitting perfectly against his side. On the screen, cartoon characters were singing about friendship or adventure or some other wholesome thing. Lucas barely registered it. Dad? Yeah? Do you like being married? The question caught him off guard. What makes you ask that? You and Arya don't seem very happy. Lucas looked down at his daughter, at her two wise eyes and the way she was watching him carefully, waiting for the truth. He'd never been good at lying to her. It's complicated, Mia. You always say that. Because it always is. She was quiet for a moment, then said, I think Arya's sad. What makes you say that? I don't know. She just seems like she's always thinking about something that makes her unhappy, even when she smiles. Lucas didn't know what to say to that. Mia was 7 years old, going through the hardest thing a kid could go through, and somehow she still had the emotional bandwidth to worry about someone else. It made his chest ache. Maybe she is, he said quietly. But that's not your job to fix, okay? I know, I just wish she wasn't sad. Me too, sweetheart. They watched the rest of the movie in silence, and when Mia finally drifted off, Lucas carried her upstairs to her room. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and stood there for a moment watching her sleep. She looked so small in the big bed, so fragile. But the color was coming back to her cheeks, slowly. The treatments were working. That was what mattered. That was why he was here. He left her door cracked open and walked down the hall toward his own room. As he passed Arya's side of the house, he heard something that made him stop, a sound that didn't belong in this sterile, perfect home. Crying. Lucas stood there in the hallway, frozen. Every instinct told him to keep walking, to respect the boundaries they'd established, to leave Arya alone with whatever was breaking her down behind that closed door. But he couldn't make his feet move. Before he could overthink it, he knocked. Softly, just twice. The crying stopped immediately. Silence stretched out, thick and uncomfortable. Then after what felt like an eternity, Arya's voice came through the door, rough and raw in a way he'd never heard. Go away, Lucas. You okay? I'm fine. You don't sound fine. I said go away. Lucas put his hand on the doorknob, hesitated, then turned it. The door opened, unlocked, which surprised him, and he found Arya sitting on the edge of her enormous bed, still in her gala dress. Mascara streaked down her face. She looked up at him, and for a second, fury flashed in her eyes. I told you to go away. I know. Lucas stepped into the room and closed the door behind him. But I'm not great at following orders. Clearly. She wiped at her face with the back of her hand, smearing the mascara worse. This is none of your business. Maybe not, but we're kind of in this together, whether we like it or not. That doesn't mean you get to barge into my bedroom when I'm... She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Falling apart? Her eyes flashed again. I'm not falling apart. Okay, I'm not. I believe you. Arya stared at him, her breathing uneven, looking like she wanted to either scream at him or throw something. Instead, she just deflated, her shoulders sagging. You should have stayed out. Probably. Lucas sat down in the chair across from the bed, keeping some distance between them. But I didn't. Why? Because Mia's right. You are sad. And I don't know what to do about that, but I figure being alone isn't helping. Arya laughed, but it came out broken. Your daughter is too perceptive for her own good. Tell me about it. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the rain had picked up, drumming against the windows in a steady rhythm. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp on the nightstand, and it made everything feel smaller, more intimate than Lucas was comfortable with. My mother called, Arya said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. After we left the gala. She wants to have lunch tomorrow, just the two of us. And that's a problem because she's going to try to tear this whole thing apart. She'll dig into your background, find out every mistake you've ever made, every debt you owe, and then she'll use it to prove that our marriage is a fraud. So we don't give her anything to find. You don't understand. Arya looked at him, and her eyes were hollow. She doesn't need proof. She just needs doubt. And once she plants that doubt in the right people's minds, my trust fund gets frozen, the board questions my judgment, and everything I've worked for falls apart. Lucas leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Then we make sure she doesn't plant any doubt. We sell this thing so hard that nobody questions it. How? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. Arya shook her head. You're too optimistic. And you're too pessimistic. Maybe we balance each other out. She almost smiled at that. Almost. You should go. I need to get some sleep. Lucas stood, heading for the door. But before he left, he turned back. For what it's worth, I don't think you're as cold as you pretend to be. You don't know me. No, but I'm starting to. He left before she could respond, closing the door softly behind him. The next morning, Lucas woke to find Arya already gone. Helen was in the kitchen making breakfast, and Mia was at the table coloring in one of the books Arya had bought her. Where's Arya? Lucas asked, pouring himself coffee. She left early, Helen said. Something about a lunch meeting. Right. The mother. Lucas felt a twist of unease in his gut, but pushed it down. Arya was capable. She'd handled worse than one manipulative parent. He spent the morning in the garage workshop, trying to focus on the commission he'd taken, a dining table for a couple on the north side. The work was soothing, familiar, but his mind kept drifting to Arya. To the way she'd looked last night, mascara streaked and breaking, to the lunch she was walking into right now. Around noon, his phone buzzed, a text from Arya. Need you to pick me up. Fontaine Restaurant. Downtown. Now. Lucas stared at the message. No explanation, no context, just a command wrapped in urgency. He texted back, Everything okay? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, just come. Lucas told Helen to keep an eye on Mia and drove downtown, his unease growing with every mile. Fontaine Restaurant was one of those places where you needed a reservation 6 months in advance and a small fortune to cover the bill. He pulled up to the valet stand, feeling out of place in his work jeans and flannel shirt, and went inside. The hostess looked at him like he'd wandered in from a homeless shelter. I'm here for Arya Bennett, Lucas said. The woman's expression shifted to something marginally more polite. Of course. Right this way. She led him through a dining room that was all white tablecloths and crystal glasses, past tables where people spoke in hushed, important tones. At a corner table near the windows, he found Arya sitting across from her mother. Both women looked up as he approached, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Lucas, Arya said, her voice tight. Thank you for coming. Her mother smiled, and it was the kind of smile that made Lucas want to check if his wallet was still in his pocket. How lovely. Your husband joins us. Lucas sat down next to Arya, feeling her tension radiating like heat. Sorry I'm late. Lost track of time. How like a tradesman, Arya's mother said. The word tradesman came out like an insult. Tell me, Mr. Reed, what exactly convinced my daughter to marry someone so far beneath her station? Mother, Arya said sharply, I'm genuinely curious. Was it your charm, your prospects, or perhaps just the novelty of slumming it? Lucas felt Arya stiffen beside him, saw her jaw clench, and made a decision. He reached under the table and took Arya's hand, lacing his fingers through hers. She startled at the contact, but he held on. I fell in love with her, Lucas said, looking Arya's mother dead in the eye. That's what convinced me. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't talk about your daughter like she's a commodity. The mother's smile didn't waver, but something cold flashed in her eyes. Love. How quaint. It works for us. Does it? She turned her attention to Arya. You haven't answered my question from earlier, darling, about the prenuptial agreement. There isn't one, Arya said. The mother's eyebrows rose. No prenup? How reckless. One might think you rushed into this marriage for reasons that have nothing to do with love. Or maybe I trust my husband, Arya shot back. Trust. Another quaint notion. The mother took a sip of her wine, studying them both. You realize, of course, that this little performance is transparent. I know exactly what you're doing, Arya. I'm having lunch with my mother and my husband. There's no performance. Isn't there? The mother set down her glass. You needed to secure your trust fund before your 30th birthday. Your father's will was quite clear on that point, married and financially independent, or the money stays locked up indefinitely. And this, she gestured vaguely at Lucas, is your solution. Lucas felt Arya's hand tighten around his. That's not... Please, darling, don't insult my intelligence. The mother leaned back in her chair. The question is, what are you going to do when I contest the validity of this marriage? Because I will. And when I do, the board will freeze your assets pending investigation. You'll lose everything you've worked for. You can't do that, Arya said, but her voice wavered. I can, and I will, unless, of course, you come to your senses and end this farce. Divorce Mr. Reed. Accept the engagement your father and I arranged with Marcus Holloway, and I'll forget this ever happened. No. The word came out hard and final, and Lucas felt a surge of something he couldn't quite name. Pride, maybe. Or respect. The mother's expression hardened. Then you leave me no choice. She stood, gathering her purse and coat with practiced elegance. Enjoy your lunch. I'm sure it will be one of the last meals you can afford on your own dime. She swept out of the restaurant, leaving a wake of strained silence behind her. Lucas and Arya sat there, hands still clasped under the table, neither of them moving. Well, Lucas said finally, she's delightful. Arya laughed, but it came out shaky. I told you. What's she going to do? Actually contest the marriage? She'll try. She has lawyers who specialize in this kind of thing. They'll dig into everything, our timeline, our relationship, whether we're actually living as a married couple. And if they find enough inconsistencies... She trailed off, shaking her head. Lucas looked down at their joined hands, then back at Arya's face. So we don't give them any inconsistencies. Lucas, I'm serious. You want to sell this thing? Then we sell it, all the way. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop tiptoeing around each other like strangers. We act like an actual married couple. In public, at home, everywhere. We make this so convincing that there's no room for doubt. Arya pulled her hand back, suddenly wary. The contract, forget the contract for a second. Your mother's about to tear your life apart. Are you really going to let some piece of paper stop you from fighting back? She stared at him, something unreadable flickering across her face. You don't know what you're asking. Then explain it to me. If we blur the lines, if we start acting like this is real, what happens when it ends? When the 6 months are up and we go our separate ways? Lucas hadn't thought about that, hadn't let himself think about that. We deal with it then. That's not a plan. No, but it's better than rolling over and letting your mother win. Arya was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face like she was looking for something, reassurance maybe, or proof that he meant what he said. Finally, she nodded. Okay, we do it your way, but we need rules. More rules? Different rules. If we're going to convince people this is real, we need to actually spend time together. Meals, outings, things couples do. And in public, we need to look, she hesitated. In love? Connected. Lucas nodded slowly. I can do that. And at home, we stop avoiding each other. My mother's lawyers will probably interview the staff, ask questions about how we interact. If Helen says we barely speak, it's over. So we become friends. Something like that. Okay? Lucas stood, offering his hand. Let's start now. Come on. Arya looked at his hand, suspicious. Where are we going? Somewhere your mother's lawyers won't follow, trust me. She hesitated, then took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Lucas drove them to the park, the same one where he'd sat reading Arya's contract weeks ago. It was a Thursday afternoon, and the place was mostly empty except for a few joggers and a woman walking her dog. They got out of the truck, and Arya looked around with obvious confusion. A park? Yeah, couples go to parks. Couples with nothing better to do, maybe. Lucas smiled. Exactly. Come on. He led her to the playground where Mia used to play before she got sick. The swings were empty, moving slightly in the breeze. Lucas sat down on one, the chains creaking under his weight. You're kidding, Arya said. Nope. Sit. She looked at the swing like it might bite her, then carefully sat down, smoothing her expensive skirt. This is ridiculous. This is normal. Normal people do normal things, like swing in parks. I haven't been on a swing since I was 8. Then you're overdue. Lucas pushed off, pumping his legs to gain momentum. The swing rose and fell, and for a moment he felt like a kid again, weightless and free. He glanced over at Arya, who was sitting perfectly still, her hands gripping the chains. You have to actually swing, he said. I know how to swing. Then do it. She gave him a look that could have frozen fire, then pushed off gingerly. The swing moved in a small arc, barely qualifying as motion. That's pathetic, Lucas said. I'm wearing a pencil skirt. So? So I can't exactly pump my legs. Then lean back and I'll push you. Absolutely not. Lucas stopped his swing and moved behind hers. Too late. He gave her a gentle push, and the swing moved forward. Arya made a small noise of surprise, gripping the chains tighter. Lucas, relax. I'm not going to launch you into orbit. He pushed again, a little harder this time, and the swing rose higher. Arya's grip loosened slightly, and he thought he saw the ghost of a smile on her face. This is absurd, she said, but there was less bite in her voice. Yeah, but it's also kind of nice, right? She didn't answer, but she didn't tell him to stop either. Lucas pushed her a few more times, watching the way her hair caught the sunlight, the way her shoulders gradually lost some of their tension. When he finally let the swing slow on its own, Arya sat there for a moment, swaying gently. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For showing up today, at the restaurant. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. We're in this together, remember? Arya turned to look at him, and there was something soft in her expression, something vulnerable. I'm not used to people being on my side. Well, get used to it, because I'm not going anywhere. They stayed at the park for another hour, talking about nothing important. Mia's favorite movies, the table Lucas was building, a restaurant Arya wanted to try. Small talk, the kind that filled space without demanding anything. But it felt like progress, like maybe they were building something that went beyond the contract. When they got back to the house, Mia was waiting in the driveway, bouncing on her toes with excitement. You're back! Helen said you went on a date! Lucas glanced at Arya, who looked slightly panicked. It wasn't exactly a date. Yes, it was, Arya said, surprising him. She crouched down to Mia's level. Your dad took me to the park. We went on the swings. Mia's eyes went wide. Really? Really? That's so romantic, Lucas laughed. I don't know if romantic is the word. It is, Mia insisted. Helen told me that when people are in love, they do fun things together, like go on dates to parks. Arya stood, smoothing her skirt. Helen's very wise. That night, after Mia was asleep, Lucas found Arya in the kitchen. She was making tea, moving through the space with the kind of precision that suggested this was a ritual. Want some? She offered. Sure. She poured him a cup, and they sat at the island, the silence between them comfortable for once. I talked to my lawyer, Arya said after a while, about what my mother said. She can contest the marriage, but it's not as simple as she made it sound. She'd need proof of fraud, concrete evidence that this was never a real relationship. And we're not giving her that. No, but we need to be careful. The next few weeks are critical. If we slip up, if anyone catches us in a lie, she trailed off, staring into her tea. Then we don't slip up. Arya looked at him. You make it sound easy. It's not. But neither is watching your kid fight for her life. I've gotten pretty good at doing hard things. Something flickered in Arya's eyes, respect, maybe, or understanding. I'm sorry about Mia, about everything she's been through. She's strong, stronger than me most days. She gets that from you. Lucas shook his head. She gets it from herself. I'm just trying to keep up. They drank their tea in silence, and when Lucas finally stood to head upstairs, Arya spoke again. Lucas? Yeah? That thing you said at the restaurant, about falling in love with me, you sold it really well. He smiled. Thanks. You weren't too bad yourself. I meant it, though. Thank you for having my back. Any time. He left her there in the kitchen, but as he climbed the stairs, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. The lines they'd drawn so carefully were starting to blur, and Lucas wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a dangerous one. Over the next 2 weeks, Lucas and Arya fell into a new rhythm. They had breakfast together every morning, with Mia chattering between them about whatever was on her mind. They went to dinner at restaurants where Arya's mother's friends might see them, holding hands across the table and laughing at jokes that weren't always forced. They took Mia to the aquarium, to the movies, to a street fair where Lucas won her a stuffed bear by throwing rings at bottles. To anyone watching, they looked like a family. And the scary part was, sometimes it felt like one. Mia's treatments were going well. The color was fully back in her cheeks now, and she had energy Lucas hadn't seen in months. She ran around the house, played in the backyard, asked if she could finally go swimming in that pool. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, and Lucas let himself hope for the first time in a long time. One Saturday, Arya surprised them both by suggesting they go to the farmer's market. It was the kind of thing she would never have done a month ago. Too public, too casual, too normal. But she led them through the stalls, picking out vegetables and fresh bread, chatting with vendors like she'd been doing it her whole life. Mia ran ahead, pointing at flowers and asking questions, and Lucas walked beside Arya, carrying the bags. You're good at this, he said. At what? Shopping? At pretending. Arya's smile faded slightly. Who says I'm pretending? Before Lucas could respond, Mia ran back, grabbing Arya's hand. Can we get flowers for the house? Of course. They bought a bouquet of sunflowers, and Mia insisted on carrying them herself. As they walked back to the car, Lucas caught Arya watching his daughter with an expression he'd seen before. Soft and a little sad. Like she was looking at something she wanted but couldn't quite reach. You're good with her, Lucas said. Arya blinked, the expression disappearing. She's easy to be good with. Still, most people wouldn't bother. I'm not most people. No, you're not. That night, after Mia went to bed, Lucas found Arya on the back patio, staring out at the pool. The water glowed blue in the dark, reflecting ripples of light across her face. You okay? He asked, stepping outside. I've been thinking. About? About what happens when this ends. She turned to look at him. In 3 months, we're supposed to divorce, go our separate ways. And I keep telling myself that's the plan. That's what we agreed to. But then I watch Mia, and I see how happy she is, and I wonder... She stopped, shaking her head. You wonder what? If I'm going to regret this. All of it. When it's over and I'm alone again. Lucas moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. You don't have to be alone. Yes, I do. That's the whole point. I get my trust fund, I cut ties with my family, and I build my own life. Independent. Free. Free and alone aren't the same thing. Maybe not, but they're close enough. Lucas wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, that she deserved more than a life built on isolation. But he didn't. Because she was right. That was the deal they'd made. And in 3 months, he'd take Mia and walk away from this glass house and the woman who'd saved them both. The thought made his chest ache in a way he didn't want to examine too closely. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I don't think you'll be alone for long. Someone's going to see what I see and stick around." "And what do you see?" Lucas looked at her, really looked at her, at the way the pool light played across her face, at the vulnerability she was trying so hard to hide. Someone who's worth fighting for. Arya's breath caught, and for a moment, Lucas thought she might say something that would crack this whole thing wide open. But instead, she just smiled, small and sad and real. "You're too optimistic, Lucas Reed. And you're too pessimistic, Arya Bennett. Maybe we balance each other out." She laughed softly. "Maybe we do." They stood there in the dark, the water glowing between them, and Lucas felt the first real crack in the wall he'd built around his heart. This was supposed to be temporary, a contract, a means to an end. But somewhere along the way, it had become something else, something he wasn't ready to name. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by courier in a cream-colored envelope with gold embossing. Lucas found it on the kitchen counter next to his coffee mug, Arya's name printed in elegant script across the front. He didn't open it. That felt like crossing a line, but he knew what it was before Arya came downstairs and confirmed it. "The Bennett Foundation Charity Gala," she said, her voice flat as she scanned the card. "Annual event, 500 guests, black tie. And this year, they're honoring my mother for her philanthropic contributions." Lucas set down his coffee. "When?" "Saturday night." Arya tossed the invitation onto the counter like it had personally offended her. "She's doing this on purpose, putting us on display in front of everyone who matters. So we go and we show them exactly what she wants to see, a happy couple." "You don't understand. This isn't like the other events. This is the entire board, every major investor, everyone who has a say in whether I keep control of my division. If we mess this up, we won't." Arya looked at him, and Lucas saw the fear she was trying to hide. "You can't know that." "No. But I know we've gotten pretty good at this. At being us." She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. Instead, she just nodded, gathering the invitation and her briefcase. "I have meetings all day. We'll talk about this tonight." After she left, Lucas stood in the kitchen for a long moment, staring at the empty doorway. The past few weeks had felt like walking a tightrope. Every public appearance, every shared meal, every moment they spent pretending was also somehow real. The lines weren't just blurring anymore. They were disappearing. Mia wandered in, still in her pajamas, dragging the stuffed bear Lucas had won her at the street fair. "Is Arya mad?" "No, sweetheart, just stressed about work." "She's always stressed about work." Mia climbed onto the bar stool, swinging her legs. "Can I have pancakes?" "Sure thing." As Lucas mixed the batter, Mia chattered about the book she was reading, about the swimming lesson Arya had promised to give her this weekend, about 100 other small things that made up her world. She was thriving, truly thriving, and watching her bounce around the kitchen with more energy than she'd had in a year made every complicated feeling Lucas had about this arrangement worth it. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Do you love Arya?" Lucas's hand stilled on the whisk. "Why do you ask?" "Because married people are supposed to love each other, and you guys seem happy. But sometimes you look at her like you're sad." Lucas turned back to the stove, buying himself time. "It's complicated, Mia. You always say that when you don't want to answer. Because it's always true." "But do you?" He poured batter onto the griddle, watching it bubble and spread. The honest answer was one he hadn't fully admitted to himself yet. The safe answer was the one that kept the boundaries intact. But Mia was looking at him with those two wise eyes, waiting for something real. "I care about her," Lucas said finally. "A lot. More than I expected to." "That sounds like love." "Maybe. I don't know." Mia seemed to accept this, turning her attention to the pancakes taking shape on the griddle. But Lucas felt the weight of the question long after breakfast was over, long after Mia ran off to play in the backyard. He'd been so focused on making this arrangement look real that he hadn't stopped to consider what happened when it started to feel real. That evening, Arya came home earlier than usual. She found Lucas in his workshop, sanding down the legs of the dining table he'd finally finished. The commission had turned into something more than just a paycheck. It was proof that he could still build something beautiful, that he hadn't lost himself completely in this strange new life. "That's gorgeous," Arya said from the doorway. Lucas looked up, surprised. She rarely came into his workshop. "Thanks. Finally got the finish right." She stepped inside, running her fingers along the smooth surface of the tabletop. "The grain is beautiful. What kind of wood?" "Walnut. The couple wanted something dark but warm. This felt right." "You have a gift for this." Lucas set down the sandpaper, studying her. She was still in her work clothes, a navy suit that probably cost more than his truck, but she'd kicked off her heels somewhere between the house and the workshop. Her hair was coming loose from its usual severe style, and she looked tired in a way that went deeper than one long day. "You okay?" he asked. "I've been thinking about Saturday, about the gala." "And?" Arya crossed her arms, leaning against the workbench. "My mother's going to push, hard. She'll manufacture situations designed to trip us up, make us look like strangers pretending to be married. And if she succeeds, she'll have everything she needs to contest the marriage and freeze my assets. So we don't let her succeed." "Lucas, you keep saying that like it's simple. But you don't know these people. They're vultures. One wrong word, one slip, and they'll tear us apart." Lucas wiped his hands on a rag and moved closer to her. "Then tell me what I need to know. Prepare me." "For what?" "For whatever your mother's going to throw at us. You know her better than anyone. What's her move?" Arya was quiet for a moment, thinking. "She'll separate us. Get me alone in one room, you in another. Then she'll have her friends ask questions, innocent on the surface but designed to catch inconsistencies. How we met, where we went on our first date, what my favorite anything is. If our stories don't match perfectly, they'll know. So we get our stories straight. It's not that easy." "Yes, it is." Lucas pulled out his phone, opening the Notes app. "We sit down right now and we build our history, every detail, and we make it so solid that nobody can poke holes in it." Arya looked at him like he'd suggested they fly to the moon. "You want to script our entire relationship?" "I want to make sure we're on the same page. Come on, when did we meet?" She hesitated, then sighed. "Fine. We met at a coffee shop 4 months ago." "Which coffee shop?" "The one on 5th and Market. I was working. You came in for lunch." "What did I order?" "How should I know?" "Because if someone asks you, you need to have an answer." "What did I order, Arya?" She thought for a moment. "A turkey sandwich and black coffee." "Good. And you?" "Green tea and a croissant." Lucas typed it into his phone. "What did we talk about?" "You complimented the book I was reading, said you'd read it too." "What book?" "Something literary, Hemingway, The Old Man and the Sea." "I've never read Hemingway." "Then you better start, in case someone asks what you thought of it." They spent the next 2 hours in the workshop, building their fictional history piece by piece. First date at an Italian restaurant on the waterfront. Lucas proposed on a hiking trail 3 months later, no ring because it was spontaneous. They got married quickly because Mia was sick and they didn't want to wait. Every detail was crafted, polished, made to sound real. By the time they finished, Lucas's head was spinning with information, but Arya looked calmer, almost peaceful. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For taking this seriously. Most people would have walked away by now." "I'm not most people." "No, you're not." They stood there in the workshop, surrounded by sawdust and the smell of wood oil, and Lucas felt that tightrope sensation again, one step away from falling into something he couldn't take back. "We should go inside," Arya said. "Mia's probably wondering where we are." But neither of them moved. "Lucas?" "Yeah?" "What you said the other night, about me being worth fighting for, did you mean it?" Lucas met her eyes. "Yeah, I did." "Why?" "Because I've watched you with Mia. I've seen how hard you work, how much you care even when you pretend you don't. And I think the people who hurt you, your mother, whoever else, they made you believe you're not worth sticking around for. But they're wrong." Arya's breath caught, and for a second Lucas thought she might close the distance between them. But then Mia's voice called from the house, breaking the moment. "Dad! Arya! Dinner's ready!" They walked back to the house together, not touching, but not quite separate either, and Lucas wondered how much longer they could keep pretending this was just business. Saturday arrived too fast. Lucas spent the morning trying to distract himself with work, but his hands were unsteady on the tools. By afternoon, he gave up and helped Mia make cookies instead, letting her chatter fill the silence in his head. Arya was locked in her room most of the day, and when she finally emerged at 6 o'clock, Lucas nearly dropped the mixing bowl. She wore a floor-length gown the color of midnight, fitted through the bodice and flowing at the skirt. Her hair was swept up, exposing the elegant line of her neck, and she'd done something subtle with makeup that made her eyes look even more striking. She looked like she belonged in a different world, one Lucas had no business entering. "Wow," Mia breathed. "You look like a princess." Arya smiled, and it was genuine. "Thank you, sweetie." "Doesn't she look pretty, Dad?" Lucas cleared his throat. "Yeah, really pretty." Arya's eyes met his, and something passed between them. Acknowledgement, maybe, or understanding. "You clean up well yourself." Lucas glanced down at the tuxedo Arya had arranged for him. It fit perfectly, tailored to his frame, but he still felt like an imposter wearing it. "I look like I'm playing dress-up." "You look handsome," Arya said firmly. "Trust me." The car service arrived at 6:30, and after kissing Mia goodbye and promising they'd be home before she woke up, Lucas and Arya slid into the back of the town car. The drive downtown was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. "Remember the script?" Arya said as they pulled up to the venue. "Coffee shop, turkey sandwich, Hemingway." "I remember." "And if anyone asks about us, we're in love, happy, building a life together." "I know, Arya, we've got this." She nodded, but Lucas saw her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed her dress. Without thinking, he reached over and took one of her hands in his. "Hey, look at me." She did. "We're going to walk in there and we're going to show every single person in that room exactly what they want to see. And your mother's going to realize she's already lost." "You can't know that." "Watch me." The doors opened and camera flashes erupted. Lucas stepped out first, then offered his hand to Arya. She took it, rising from the car with practiced grace, and together they walked up the red carpet toward the entrance of the grand ballroom. Inside was even more overwhelming than Lucas had imagined. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting prismatic light across hundreds of guests in formal wear. A string quartet played in one corner, the music barely audible over the hum of conversation. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more per bite than Lucas's grocery bill. Arya's hand tightened on his arm. "There's my mother, 12 o'clock." Lucas followed her gaze and spotted the woman holding court near the stage, surrounded by admirers. She looked regal in a silver gown, every inch the philanthropist being honored tonight. When her eyes landed on Arya and Lucas, her smile sharpened. "Showtime," Lucas murmured. They made their way through the crowd, stopping to shake hands and accept congratulations on their marriage. Lucas played his part perfectly. Attentive husband, proud of his brilliant wife, grateful for the opportunity to support her. Arya matched him step for step, her hand never leaving his arm, her smiles looking almost genuine. But then they reached Arya's mother, and the temperature dropped. "Arya, how lovely you could make it." The woman's eyes swept over Lucas. "And you brought your husband." "Of course. Lucas wanted to be here to celebrate your achievement." "How thoughtful." The mother's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Reed, I trust you're enjoying your introduction to our world." "It's quite an experience," Lucas said carefully. "I'm sure it is. Tell me, how is your furniture business? Arya mentioned you work with your hands." The words dripped with condescension, but Lucas kept his expression neutral. "It's going well. Actually just finished a commission this week." "How industrious. And you're managing to balance that with your new family responsibilities. I imagine it must be challenging, adjusting to Arya's lifestyle." "We make it work. Do you?" The mother tilted her head. "Arya, darling, would you mind joining me for a moment? There's someone I'd like you to meet. Mr. Reed, I'm sure you won't mind if I steal my daughter for just a few minutes." Arya's grip on Lucas's arm tightened almost imperceptibly. "Actually, Mother, it will only take a moment, I promise." Lucas felt Arya's hesitation, saw the calculation in her eyes. This was exactly what she'd predicted. The separation, the divide and conquer strategy. But refusing would look suspicious. "Go ahead," Lucas said quietly. "I'll be fine." Arya searched his face, then nodded. I'll be right back. He watched her disappear into the crowd with her mother, feeling exposed without her beside him. Almost immediately, a man approached, early 50s, expensive suit, the kind of confident posture that came from old money. You must be Lucas Reed, James Crawford. I'm on the board with Arya. They shook hands. Nice to meet you. Quite a whirlwind romance, from what I understand. You two met just a few months ago? Here it was, the interrogation. Lucas smiled. 4 months. Feels like longer, though, in a good way. And how did you meet, if you don't mind my asking? Coffee shop, 5th and Market. I was grabbing lunch, she was working. I noticed she was reading Hemingway and couldn't help commenting on it. You're a Hemingway fan? I am. The Old Man and the Sea is one of my favorites. Crawford nodded, seemingly satisfied. And the proposal? I heard it was quite spontaneous. It was. We were hiking, and it just felt right. I didn't have a ring or anything planned, just knew I wanted to marry her. How romantic. And Arya's daughter. My daughter, Lucas corrected, his voice firm. Mia. Of course. My apologies. She's doing well, I hope. Much better, thanks. The treatments are working. They talked for a few more minutes, Crawford asking questions that seemed casual but were clearly designed to probe for inconsistencies. Lucas answered each one carefully, sticking to the script he and Arya had built. By the time Crawford excused himself, Lucas's shoulders were tight with tension. He grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and moved toward the edge of the room, needing space to breathe. That's when he saw her, Arya, standing on the far side of the ballroom with her mother, and a man Lucas didn't recognize. The man was tall, polished, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than Lucas's truck, and he was standing too close to Arya, his hand on her elbow in a way that made Lucas's jaw clench. He started across the room, weaving through clusters of guests, his eyes locked on Arya. As he got closer, he heard her mother's voice, sharp and pointed. Perfectly suitable match, Marcus. You and Arya have so much in common. If she hadn't rushed into this unfortunate situation with Mr. Reed, Mother, please, Arya said, her voice tight. I'm simply saying what everyone else is thinking. This marriage is clearly a mistake, and it's not too late to correct it. Lucas reached them just as Marcus, the man her parents had wanted her to marry, leaned in closer to Arya. Your mother's right, you know. We both know this thing with Reed isn't real. Why keep up the charade? Back off, Lucas said, his voice low. All three of them turned to look at him. Arya's expression was relief mixed with something else. Gratitude, maybe, or fear. Her mother's face went cold. Mr. Reed, how lovely of you to join us. I'm not joining anything. I'm getting my wife and leaving this conversation. Marcus straightened, eyeing Lucas with undisguised contempt. Your wife. Is that what we're calling it? That's what I'm calling it. What are you calling it? A convenient arrangement that's fooling no one. Lucas stepped closer, close enough that Marcus had to tilt his head back slightly to maintain eye contact. You got something to say? Say it clearly. Gentlemen, Arya's mother interjected, her voice sharp. Let's not make a scene. But the damage was done. People were starting to notice, conversations quieting as heads turned toward the confrontation. Lucas felt Arya's hand on his arm, pulling gently. Lucas, don't. No. He didn't take his eyes off Marcus. This guy needs to understand something. Arya's my wife. Actually, my wife. Not a transaction, not a convenience, not whatever story you've convinced yourselves of. And if you've got a problem with that, we can take it outside. Marcus laughed, but it sounded nervous. This is absurd. Everyone knows what? That I love my wife? That I do anything for her? Yeah, they know, because it's true. The words hung in the air, and Lucas felt them settle over him like a weight. Because somewhere in the middle of defending their arrangement, he'd stopped lying. This wasn't part of the script. This wasn't strategy. This was real. Arya stared at him, her eyes wide, and Lucas saw his own realization reflected back at him. The room around them seemed to fade, all the guests and cameras and judgment becoming background noise. Lucas, she whispered. We're leaving, he said, still looking at her. Right now. Her mother started to protest, but Arya was already moving, taking Lucas's hand and pulling him toward the exit. They walked quickly, ignoring the stares and whispers, pushing through the crowd until they burst out into the cool night air. The valet stand was chaos, couples waiting for cars, photographers hovering for shots. Lucas kept walking, pulling Arya with him down the sidewalk away from the venue. He didn't know where they were going, didn't care. He just needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out what the hell had just happened. They made it 3 blocks before Arya stopped, pulling her hand free. "What was that?" she demanded. Lucas turned to face her. "What was what?" "What you said to Marcus about loving me. I was defending us. That's what we agreed to do. That's not what that was, and you know it." Her voice was shaking. "You weren't playing a part. That was real." Lucas ran both hands through his hair, messing up whatever style the barber had attempted. "Yeah, it was. Lucas, I know. I know this wasn't the plan. I know we had rules and boundaries and a contract that says this ends in 2 months. But somewhere between the park and the farmer's market and watching you tuck Mia in at night, I stopped pretending." Arya took a step back, wrapping her arms around herself. "You can't do this." "Can't do what? Have feelings?" "Can't complicate this. We had an agreement." "Screw the agreement, Arya. We're both lying to ourselves if we think this is still just business." "It has to be business. That's the only way this works." "Why? Because you're scared?" "Yes!" The word came out fierce and raw. "Yes, I'm scared. Because everyone I've ever trusted has either left or tried to control me. And this thing with you and Mia, it feels like something I could actually want. And when it ends, because it has to end, Lucas, it's going to destroy me." Lucas closed the distance between them, his hands finding her shoulders. "What if it doesn't have to end?" "Don't. What if we stop trying to control how this turns out and just see where it goes?" "We can't. I can't." Tears were streaming down her face now, ruining her careful makeup. "You don't understand. My whole life, I've had to plan everything, control everything, because the second I let my guard down, someone takes advantage. And if I let myself love you, if I let myself believe this could be real, and then it falls apart, I won't survive it." Lucas pulled her into his arms, and after a moment of resistance, she collapsed against him, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He held her there on the sidewalk, 3 blocks from the gala, where her mother was probably already spinning this into another weapon, and felt his own certainty crystallize. He loved her, completely, terrifyingly, irrevocably. And she loved him too, even if she was too scared to admit it. "I'm not going anywhere," he said into her hair. "I don't care what the contract says. I don't care what your mother does. I'm not leaving." "You say that now, I say it forever. Arya, look at me." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes, and Lucas saw everything she was feeling written across her face, fear and hope and longing all tangled together. "I love you," he said clearly. "Not because of the arrangement or the money or any of it. I love you because you're brilliant and stubborn and you pretend not to care, but you care more than anyone I've ever met. And I love that Mia makes you smile when you think no one's watching, and I love that you cry at sappy movies even though you try to hide it. I love you, Arya. Actually, really, completely." She was openly crying now, her carefully constructed armor completely shattered. "This is a terrible idea. Probably the worst I've ever had. We're going to mess this up. Maybe, but I'd rather mess it up with you than play it safe without you." Arya laughed through her tears, a broken, beautiful sound. "You're insane." "Yeah, but so are you. That's why we work." She kissed him then, sudden and desperate, her hands fisting in his tuxedo jacket. Lucas pulled her closer, tasting salt from her tears and champagne, and something that was just Arya. The world narrowed to this moment, this woman in his arms, this truth they'd both been running from finally catching up. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Arya pressed her forehead against his. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "Me too." "What do we do now?" Lucas thought about the gala they'd just walked out of, about Arya's mother and Marcus and all the people who wanted to see them fail. He thought about the contract with 2 months left, about the life they'd built that was supposed to be temporary. And then he thought about Mia, about coming home to Arya every night, about waking up next to her every morning, about building something real instead of something safe. "Now?" he said. "Now we go home. And tomorrow we figure out how to make this work for real. Arya nodded, her arms still wrapped around him. Okay. Okay? Okay. They stood there for a moment longer, holding each other on a sidewalk in downtown while the city moved around them. Then Lucas pulled out his phone and called for a car, and they waited in comfortable silence, Arya's head resting on his shoulder. The drive home was quiet but not uncomfortable. Arya kept her hand in his, their fingers intertwined, and Lucas watched the city lights blur past the window. Everything had changed in the space of one evening, one confrontation, one honest admission. And while the logical part of his brain was screaming about complications and consequences, the rest of him felt settled in a way he hadn't in years. When they pulled into the driveway, all the lights in the house were off except for the one in Mia's room. Lucas frowned. She should be asleep by now. They went inside quietly, and Lucas climbed the stairs to check on his daughter. He found her sitting up in bed, still awake, clutching her stuffed bear. "Mia, what are you doing up?" She looked at him with worried eyes. "I had a bad dream. Helen said you guys would be home soon. We're home now. Come on, let's get you settled." But Mia was looking past him to where Arya stood in the doorway. "Are you okay? Your makeup's all messy." Arya touched her face, seeming to remember the tears. "I'm okay, sweetie. Just a long night." "Did something bad happen?" Lucas sat on the edge of Mia's bed. "No, actually, something good happened." "What?" He looked at Arya, who nodded slightly. "Arya and I decided we're going to stop pretending." Mia's brow furrowed. "Pretending what?" "That this is temporary. That we're not a real family." Lucas took a breath. "I love Arya, Mia. Really love her. And if she'll have us, I want her to stay. For real." Mia's face lit up. "Really?" "Really." She launched herself at Lucas, hugging him tight. Then she squirmed free and ran to Arya, wrapping her arms around her waist. Arya stiffened for just a second, then softened, her hand coming up to stroke Mia's hair. "Does this mean you're not going to leave?" Mia asked, her voice muffled against Arya's dress. "No," Arya said quietly. "I'm not going to leave." "Promise?" Arya met Lucas's eyes over Mia's head, and he saw the fear there, the uncertainty. But he also saw determination. "I promise." They got Mia back into bed, both of them tucking her in together. As they left the room, Lucas heard his daughter's sleepy voice. "I knew you guys loved each other. I could tell." Out in the hallway, Arya turned to Lucas. "She's scary perceptive." "Tell me about it." They stood there in the dim light, reality starting to settle back in. Lucas could see Arya's mind working, already cataloging all the complications this decision would bring. "My mother's going to fight harder now," she said. "Let her. The board might have questions. About why we left early, about the scene with Marcus. We'll handle it." "Lucas, I'm serious. This could get ugly." He took her hands, holding them between his. "Arya, we just blew up our entire arrangement in the middle of your mother's gala. It's already ugly, but I don't care. Because for the first time since all this started, we're being honest. And honest is worth fighting for." She studied his face like she was memorizing it. "I don't know how to do this. The real thing." Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." "That's not very reassuring." "It's the best I've got." Arya smiled then, genuine and unguarded, and Lucas felt his heart skip. "Okay, together." They went to their separate bedrooms out of habit, but Lucas found himself standing in the hallway between their doors, not ready for the night to end. Arya must have felt the same because she opened her door and looked at him. "I don't want to be alone tonight," she said quietly. "Neither do I." She held out her hand and Lucas took it, following her into her room. They didn't do anything more than change into comfortable clothes and climb into bed, but lying there next to her felt more intimate than anything they'd done before. Arya curled into his side, her head on his chest, and Lucas wrapped his arms around her. "This is real," she whispered. "Yeah, it is." "I'm still scared." "That's okay. I've got you." And as Arya's breathing evened out and she drifted into sleep, Lucas stared at the ceiling and thought about everything that was coming, the fights with her mother, the questions from the board, the renegotiation of a contract that no longer applied to what they'd become. But he also thought about mornings with Arya and Mia, about building furniture while his wife worked in the next room, about a future that looked nothing like what he'd planned, but everything like what he wanted. Tomorrow they'd face the consequences. Tomorrow they'd start fighting for what they'd accidentally built. But tonight, Lucas held the woman he loved and felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. Lucas woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and Arya's arm draped across his chest. For a moment, he just lay there, listening to her breathe, trying to reconcile the reality of where he was with everything that had happened the night before. They'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and now they had to live with the consequences. Arya stirred, her eyes blinking open. When she saw him, a small smile crossed her face, genuine and unguarded in a way he'd never seen before. "Morning," she murmured. "Morning." They stayed like that for a few minutes, neither one willing to break the spell. But then Mia's voice echoed from downstairs, calling for breakfast, and reality came crashing back. "We should talk," Arya said, sitting up, "about what happens now." "Yeah, we should." But before they could start that conversation, Lucas's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He picked it up and saw a text from a number he didn't recognize. The message made his stomach drop. "Mr. Reed, this is Patricia Chandler from the Bennett Foundation Board. We need to speak with you and Arya urgently regarding last night's events. Please call me at your earliest convenience." He showed the message to Arya, whose expression went carefully blank. "That was fast," she said. "What do we tell them?" "The truth, or as much of it as we can without making things worse." She climbed out of bed, already shifting into the controlled, professional version of herself Lucas knew so well. "Get dressed. We need to call her back before this spirals." 20 minutes later, they were in Arya's home office with the door closed, speakerphone on, listening to Patricia Chandler's clipped, efficient voice explain exactly how bad things had gotten. "The photographs are everywhere," Patricia said. "You two leaving the gala early, looking distressed. Marcus Holloway claiming you assaulted him." "I didn't assault anyone," Lucas interrupted. "He's saying you threatened him. And your mother, Arya, is using this as evidence that the marriage is unstable. She's formally requested an emergency board meeting to discuss your fitness to lead your division." Arya's knuckles were white where she gripped the edge of the desk. "She can't do that." "She can and she is. The meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning. You'll both need to be there to defend yourselves." "Both of us?" Lucas said. "Your marriage is the issue at hand, Mr. Reed. The board needs to hear from both parties." Patricia's voice softened slightly. "For what it's worth, not everyone agrees with your mother, Arya. But you need to handle this carefully. One more misstep and she'll have the ammunition she needs to remove you entirely." After they hung up, Arya sat in silence, staring at nothing. Lucas wanted to comfort her, to promise it would be okay, but empty platitudes felt insulting. "What do we do?" he asked instead. "We prepare. We go into that meeting and we make them understand that this marriage is real, that I'm capable of running my division, and that my mother's vendetta is personal, not professional." "How?" Arya finally looked at him. "By telling them the truth. Not the contract, not the arrangement, the real truth. That we fell in love despite the circumstances. That what started as convenience became something neither of us expected. You think they'll believe that?" "They'll believe it because it's true, and because we're going to walk in there united." She stood, pacing the length of the office. "But there's something else. Something I haven't told you." Lucas felt a flicker of unease. "What?" "My trust fund. The one that was contingent on me being married by 30. My birthday is in 3 weeks." "I thought you had 2 months." "I lied. To you, to my mother, to everyone. I was running out of time and I panicked. That's why I needed the marriage so quickly, why I was willing to pay so much." She stopped pacing, facing him. "If my mother succeeds in proving this marriage is fraudulent before my birthday, I lose everything. The trust fund goes back to the estate, I lose my position on the board, and she'll have full control of the company division I've been building for 5 years. Lucas processed this. "So we have 3 weeks to convince everyone this is legitimate." "Less than that. My mother's moving fast. If tomorrow's meeting doesn't go well, it will." Lucas crossed to her, taking her hands. "We'll make sure of it. But no more secrets, Arya. If we're doing this for real, I need to know everything." She nodded, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm sorry. I should have told you from the start." "Yeah, you should have, but we'll deal with it." A knock on the door interrupted them. Helen's voice came through, apologetic. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but Mia's asking for breakfast." And there are photographers outside the gate. Lucas and Arya exchanged a look. The siege had begun. They spent the rest of Sunday in the house, avoiding the photographers camped outside and preparing for the board meeting. Arya coached Lucas on what to expect, the questions they'd ask, the traps they'd set, the way her mother would try to twist everything. They rehearsed answers until Lucas's head spun, but he forced himself to focus. This wasn't just about Arya's career anymore. This was about their future. Mia sensed the tension, growing quieter as the day wore on. That evening, she climbed into Lucas's lap while he and Arya worked at the kitchen table, laying out their strategy. "Why are those people outside?" Mia asked. "They're reporters," Arya said gently. "They want to take pictures." "Of us?" "Of your dad and me, because of the party last night." Mia frowned. "Are you in trouble?" Lucas hugged her closer. "No, sweetheart. Just some grown-up stuff we have to work through." "Is it because of me? Because I'm sick?" "No." Arya's voice was firm. "This has nothing to do with you. You're perfect exactly as you are." Mia seemed to accept this, settling against Lucas's chest. "I don't want you guys to be sad anymore." "We're not sad," Lucas said, though his throat felt tight. "Just a little stressed." "That's the same thing." After Mia went to bed, Lucas found Arya standing at the window in the living room, staring out at the lights from the photographer's cameras. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "We're going to get through this," he said. "You keep saying that." "Because it's true." She leaned back against him. "What if it's not enough? What if we lose tomorrow? Then we figure out plan B." "There is no plan B, Lucas. This is everything." "No." He turned her to face him. "This," he gestured between them, "is everything. The money, the company, your mother's approval, that's all just noise. What matters is that we're in this together." Easy to say when you're not about to lose your entire life's work. You're right. It is easy for me to say, but that doesn't make it less true. Lucas cupped her face in his hands. "I love you. Mia loves you. And if the worst happens tomorrow, we'll figure it out, together." Arya kissed him then, desperate and clinging, like she was trying to memorize the feeling. When they broke apart, she pressed her forehead to his. "I don't deserve you," she whispered. "Yeah, you do. You just don't believe it yet." Monday morning arrived too quickly. Lucas put on the same suit he'd worn to the gala, trying not to see it as a bad omen. Arya dressed in a sharp charcoal pantsuit that made her look every inch the executive she was. Her hair pulled back severely, her makeup perfect. She looked untouchable, but Lucas saw the tremor in her hands as she fastened her watch. They left Mia with Helen, who promised to keep her distracted with baking projects. The drive downtown was silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The Bennett Foundation offices occupied the top 3 floors of Bennett Tower, and as the elevator climbed, Lucas felt his stomach drop with each passing floor. The boardroom was intimidating, all dark wood and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. 12 people sat around an enormous conference table, Arya's mother at the head. She looked triumphant, her expression radiating cold satisfaction. "Arya, Mr. Reed, please sit." Patricia Chandler gestured to 2 chairs positioned at the opposite end from Arya's mother, isolated from the rest of the board. They sat, and Lucas felt every eye in the room assessing him, judging him, finding him wanting. He reached under the table and took Arya's hand, holding it where everyone could see. "Let's begin," Patricia said. "Mrs. Bennett has raised concerns about Arya's judgment and fitness to continue leading the Sustainable Development Division. Specifically, she's questioning the legitimacy of Arya's recent marriage and whether it was entered into fraudulently to secure access to her trust fund." "That's absurd," Arya said, her voice steady. "My marriage is legitimate and has nothing to do with my professional capabilities." Arya's mother smiled thinly. "Then you won't mind answering a few questions. Mr. Reed, how long have you known my daughter?" Lucas had rehearsed this. 4 months. "And you married her after knowing her for what? 2 months? 3? When you know, you know." "How convenient. And tell me, before you met Arya, what was your financial situation?" Lucas's jaw tightened. "I was in debt, medical bills for my daughter." "Substantial debt?" "Yes." "And now those debts are paid. By my daughter. By my wife. Who wanted to help." Arya's mother leaned forward. Or by a woman desperate to meet the marriage requirement in her father's will. Tell me, mister. Reed, did Arya explain the terms of her trust fund to you before you agreed to marry her? Lucas hesitated a fraction too long, and he saw the mother's eyes light up with triumph. She did, he said, but that's not why I married her. No? Then why did you, be honest? A working-class carpenter with a sick child suddenly marries a wealthy heiress who just happens to need a husband before her 30th birthday. What else would you call that but a transaction? I'd call it falling in love, Lucas said, his voice rising. I'd call it finding someone who sees my daughter as more than a burden. I'd call it meeting someone brilliant and stubborn who pretends she doesn't need anyone but breaks down crying when she thinks no one's watching. The room went silent. Arya's hand tightened around his. I married your daughter because she's the best person I know, Lucas continued, looking directly at Arya's mother. Not in spite of the money or the complications or the fact that you've spent your entire life trying to control her. I married her because when she talks about the work she does, her whole face lights up. Because she learned to make pancakes for Mia even though she'd never cooked breakfast before. Because she sits up at night reading design proposals and actually cares about making a difference. And yeah, the money helped save my daughter's life. But if that makes me a gold digger in your eyes, I don't care. Because I'd marry Arya again tomorrow with nothing in my bank account. He turned to Arya, who was staring at him with tears streaming down her face, not even trying to hide them anymore. I love you, he said. I loved you before I understood what was happening, and I'm going to keep loving you no matter what happens in this room. Arya pulled his hand to her lips, kissing his knuckles. I love you too. One of the board members, a silver-haired man Lucas didn't recognize, cleared his throat. Mrs. Bennett, I'm not sure what you were hoping to prove here, but I'm not seeing evidence of fraud. They're putting on a performance, Arya's mother snapped. Perhaps. Or perhaps they're simply in love. He looked at Arya. Your personal life aside, can you speak to your professional performance over the past 6 months? Arya wiped her eyes and straightened in her chair, shifting seamlessly into business mode. The Sustainable Development Division has exceeded every metric we set at the start of the fiscal year. We've secured 3 major contracts, reduced operational costs by 18%, and our employee satisfaction scores are the highest in the company. My personal life has zero impact on my ability to lead. And the incident at the gala? Another board member asked. Walking out in the middle of your mother's event? Was a personal decision, Arya said firmly. I was defending my husband from baseless accusations. I'd do it again. Patricia Chandler looked around the table. Does anyone else have questions? The board members exchanged glances. Several shook their heads. Then I motion we move to a vote, Patricia said. All in favor of maintaining Arya Bennett in her current position? Hands went up around the table. Lucas counted quickly. 8 out of 12. Only Arya's mother and 3 others voted against. Patricia nodded. Motion carries. Arya, you retain your position. This meeting is adjourned. Arya's mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Arya said, standing to face her. I'm done letting you control my life. I'm done trying to earn approval. I'm never going to get. And I'm done pretending we have any kind of real relationship. From now on, our interactions will be strictly professional. And if you come after me or my family again, I will make sure everyone in this company knows exactly who you really are. Her mother's face went white with rage. You'll regret this. No, I really won't. Lucas watched Arya stare down her mother, saw the moment the older woman realized she'd lost. Without another word, she swept from the room, 3 of her allies following behind. The remaining board members approached Arya, offering congratulations and support. Patricia pulled her aside, speaking in low tones. Lucas stayed back, giving them space, still processing what had just happened. They'd won. Against all odds, they'd actually won. When Arya finally broke free, she crossed to Lucas and threw her arms around him. He held her tight, feeling her whole body trembling. We did it, she whispered. No, you did it. She pulled back to look at him. What you said in there, I meant every word. I know, that's what scares me, that you actually see me that way. You should be used to it by now. She laughed, and it came out a little watery. I don't think I'll ever get used to you. They left the building through the back entrance to avoid photographers, and for the first time in days, Lucas felt like he could breathe. In the car, Arya immediately pulled out her phone, already typing messages. What are you doing? Lucas asked. Damage control. I need to get ahead of whatever narrative my mother's spinning, and I need to make sure the board knows I'm serious about cutting her out. Can we just take a second to acknowledge that we just survived that? Arya looked up from her phone. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm still in crisis mode. I know, but we won, Arya. You can slow down for a minute. She set the phone down, leaning back against the seat. I can't believe you said all that. In front of everyone. Which part? All of it. The pancakes, the design proposals, the crying. You basically stripped me bare in that room. Should I not have? No, you should have. It's just, no one's ever defended me like that before. Lucas took her hand. Get used to it. When they got home, Mia ambushed them at the door, flour dusted across her face and apron. Did you win? We won, Arya said, scooping her up despite the flour. We absolutely won. Good, because Helen and I made celebration cookies, chocolate chip. That night, after celebrating with cookies and takeout pizza, Lucas found Arya in her office. She was staring at her computer screen, but her expression was distant. Hey, you okay? He asked. I've been thinking about something. What's that? The contract, the one we signed. It's still technically in effect for another 6 weeks. Lucas leaned against the doorframe. So? So maybe we should tear it up. Tear it up? Yeah. Make this official. Not a 6-month arrangement, not a deal with an expiration date, just a marriage. Lucas crossed to her, pulling her to her feet. Arya Bennett, are you proposing to me? We're already married. Yeah, but that was business. This would be different. She smiled, and it reached her eyes. Fine. Lucas Reed, will you stay married to me? For real this time? On one condition. What's that? We burn the contract together. Right now. Arya pulled open her desk drawer and retrieved the folder, the same one she'd given him all those months ago. She handed it to Lucas, and together they carried it downstairs to the fireplace. Lucas crumpled the pages one by one, feeding them into the flames while Arya watched. When the last page caught fire, Lucas turned to her. Now it's real. Now it's real, she echoed. They stood there watching the contract burn, and Lucas thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The desperation and fear, the careful walls they'd built and slowly dismantled, the way pretending had somehow become truth. What happens now? Arya asked. Now we figure out how to do this without a script. We make mistakes, we fight, we figure it out as we go. That sounds terrifying. Yeah, but also kind of exciting. Arya leaned into him, and Lucas wrapped his arms around her. Through the window, he could see Mia playing in the backyard, chasing fireflies in the gathering dusk. His daughter was healthy. His wife, his real wife, was safe. And for the first time since this whole thing started, the future felt less like a ticking clock and more like an open road. I have an idea, Arya said suddenly. Yeah? Let's go away, just the three of us. Somewhere your mother's lawyers can't find us, where there are no board meetings or photographers. Just a week to be a normal family. Lucas pulled back to look at her. You want to take a vacation? I want to take our daughter to the beach and teach her to swim. I want to eat bad food and sleep late and not think about work for 5 consecutive days. Is that crazy? No, it's perfect. They started planning that night. A rental house on the coast, far enough from the city to feel like escape. Mia was ecstatic when they told her, already making lists of things to bring and activities she wanted to do. But before they could leave, there was one more piece of business to handle. On Thursday afternoon, a courier delivered an envelope from Arya's mother's lawyers. Lucas found Arya in the living room, staring at the unopened envelope like it might explode. What is it? He asked. Legal notice, probably. She's not done fighting. Want me to open it? Arya handed him the envelope. Lucas tore it open and pulled out a single sheet of paper. As he read, his eyebrows rose. She's surrendering, he said. What? Your mother. She's withdrawing all challenges to the marriage and your position. Says here she wants to avoid further conflict and wishes you well. Arya took the paper from him, reading it twice. This doesn't make sense. She doesn't give up. Maybe she finally realized she can't win. Or maybe she's planning something else. Lucas could see Arya's mind spinning, looking for the trap, the hidden angle. He took the paper back and set it aside. Or maybe it doesn't matter, he said. Maybe we just accept the win and move on. Arya looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, we move on. The next Monday, they packed up Lucas's truck, now comically out of place in Arya's circular driveway, and headed for the coast. Mia sat in the back, pressed against the window, watching the city give way to highway and then to rolling hills and finally to glimpses of blue ocean. The rental house was perfect, weathered wood and big windows sitting on a bluff overlooking the water. Mia ran from room to room, claiming the one with the best view, while Lucas and Arya brought in the bags. That first evening, they walked on the beach, Mia running ahead to chase waves while Lucas and Arya followed hand in hand. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Lucas felt something settle in his chest, a peace he hadn't felt in years. This was a good idea, he said. I have them sometimes. Sometimes, Arya laughed, bumping her shoulder against his. Thank you. For what? For fighting for us. For seeing something in me worth staying for. Arya, I'd fight for you every day for the rest of my life if that's what it took. She stopped walking, turning to face him. The wind whipped her hair around her face, and she looked younger somehow, less burdened. I love you. I don't think I've said it enough. You've said it. Not enough. I love you, Lucas Reed. I love your terrible jokes and the way you make furniture like it's art and the way you love Mia. I love that you saw through all my walls and stayed anyway. And I'm sorry it took me so long to let you in. Lucas kissed her there on the beach, with the waves crashing and Mia's laughter echoing, and the whole world feeling impossibly big and impossibly right. The week passed in a blur of sun and sand and simple happiness. They taught Mia to swim, Arya surprisingly patient, Lucas hovering nervously, even though the water only came up to Mia's chest. They built sand castles and collected shells and ate ice cream for dinner because why not? One afternoon while Mia napped, Lucas and Arya sat on the deck, drinking coffee and watching the ocean. Arya had her laptop open, old habits, but she wasn't looking at it. I've been thinking, she said. About? About the division, about what I want to do next. You're not quitting, are you? No, but I want to restructure some things. Spend less time in the office, more time in the field. And I want to start a program for kids like Mia, families struggling with medical debt who can't afford treatment. Lucas set down his coffee. That's a big undertaking. I know. But I've been thinking about what you said, about how the money doesn't matter if I'm not using it for something that means something. And this would mean something. It's a good idea, Arya. A really good one. You think so? I think you're going to change a lot of lives. She smiled, closing the laptop. We're going to change a lot of lives. This is a we thing now. Yeah? Yeah, you're stuck with me, Reed, for better or worse. Mostly better, I'm guessing. Don't push your luck. On their last night at the beach, they had a bonfire. Mia roasted marshmallows until her face was sticky with melted sugar, then fell asleep in Lucas's lap while Arya fed driftwood into the flames. I don't want to go back, Arya said quietly. Me neither, but we have to eventually. I know, it's just, this week has been perfect, normal, and I'm scared that when we go back, everything's going to get complicated again. Lucas looked down at his sleeping daughter, then at his wife, silhouetted against the firelight. It probably will get complicated, but we'll handle it, just like we've handled everything else. Together? Always together. They stayed on the beach until the fire burned down to embers, then carried Mia back to the house and tucked her into bed. In their own room, Lucas and Arya lay tangled together, listening to the sound of waves through the open window. Thank you for this week, Arya whispered. Thank you for suggesting it. Lucas? Yeah? I'm not scared anymore. About us? About the future? I don't know what's coming, but I know we can handle it. Lucas kissed her forehead. Yeah, we can. The drive back to the city felt too short. Mia chattered the whole way, already making plans for their next trip, while Lucas and Arya exchanged glances in the rearview mirror. Real life was waiting for them. Work and responsibilities and all the complications that came with merging two very different lives. But as they pulled into the driveway of the glass house, their house now, really, Lucas felt ready. They'd fought for this. They'd earned this. And whatever came next, they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else. Together, the transition back to real life wasn't seamless. Lucas had expected that. What he hadn't expected was how quickly the cracks would show, not in their relationship, but in everything surrounding it. The glass house that had felt like a sanctuary now felt exposed. Every window a reminder that they were still being watched, still being judged. The first morning back, Lucas woke to find Arya already dressed for work, standing at the bedroom window with her phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was clipped, professional, but he could hear the strain underneath. I don't care what she told the press. We're moving forward with the Youth Medical Fund regardless of her objections. Yes, I'm aware she's still on the board. No, that doesn't change anything. She hung up and turned to find Lucas watching her. Your mother? He asked. Her lawyer. Apparently surrendering wasn't the same as accepting defeat. She's blocking the charitable fund I wanted to start. Lucas sat up. Can she do that? Technically no, but she can make it difficult enough that it takes months to get approval. Bureaucracy as warfare. Arya rubbed her temples. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you with work drama. It's not drama. It's your life. Our life now. She crossed to the bed, sitting on the edge. I thought burning the contract would make everything simpler, but it's just different complications now. Yeah, well, nothing worth having comes easy. Arya smiled, but it was tired. You and your optimism. Someone has to balance out your pessimism. She kissed him, quick and distracted, then stood. I have to get to the office. There's a meeting about the Malaysia project at 9. Arya, wait. She paused at the door. We're okay, right? You and me? Her expression softened. Yeah, we're okay. Better than okay. I'm just adjusting to all of this being real. Me too. After she left, Lucas got Mia ready for the day. She was starting to attend school part-time now, her health finally stable enough for a semi-normal schedule. Watching her pack her backpack and chatter about seeing her friends, Lucas felt a surge of gratitude so intense it almost hurt. 2 weeks ago, they'd been on the beach. Mia had run into the waves without fear, her laughter carrying on the wind. She'd been strong enough to swim, strong enough to play for hours without needing rest. The treatments had worked. His daughter was going to be okay. And it was because of Arya, because she'd offered him a lifeline when he was drowning, because she'd kept her promises even when everything else was falling apart. He drove Mia to school, watching her wave goodbye at the entrance before disappearing into the building. Then he headed to his workshop, which had grown in the months since the arrangement began. What started as 1 commission had turned into 5, then 10. Word had spread about the carpenter who could make furniture sing, and Lucas found himself with a waiting list. But today he wasn't working on commissions. Today he was building something for Arya. It had started as an idea during their beach trip. Arya had mentioned wanting a reading nook, somewhere quiet to escape when work became too much. Lucas had sketched designs on napkins at dinner, Arya offering suggestions while Mia colored beside them. Now he was bringing that sketch to life. A window seat with built-in shelving crafted from cherry wood that glowed warm under the workshop lights. He'd spent weeks getting the joinery perfect, the curves just right. This wasn't just furniture. This was a promise made tangible, that he was here, that he was building a life with her, that love could be something you created with your hands. He was sanding the final piece when his phone rang. Arya's name flashed on the screen. Hey, everything okay? Her voice was tight. Can you come downtown to the office? Lucas set down the sandpaper. What's wrong? Just, please come. I need you here. 20 minutes later, Lucas walked into Bennett Tower for the first time since the board meeting. The receptionist recognized him this time, directing him to Arya's floor without question. He found her in her office, standing at the window with her arms wrapped around herself. Arya? She turned and he saw tears on her face. My mother's dead. Lucas felt the words hit him like a physical blow. What? Heart attack, this morning. She collapsed at home. They couldn't revive her. He crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. She stood rigid for a moment, then collapsed against him, her whole body shaking with sobs. I know I should feel something, she said into his chest. Sad or relieved or something, but all I feel is empty. Like I spent my whole life fighting her and now there's just nothing. Lucas held her tighter. You're allowed to feel however you feel. There's no right way to grieve someone complicated. She was my mother, and I hated her. And now she's gone, and we'll never. She couldn't finish the sentence. They stood like that for a long time, Arya crying while Lucas held her, until eventually the tears ran out and she pulled back, wiping her face. I have to call people, make arrangements. There's a funeral to plan and estate issues, and she stopped, overwhelmed. I don't know how to do this. You don't have to do it alone. I'm here. Whatever you need. She nodded, taking a shaky breath. Okay. I need to tell the board. Will you come with me? Of course. The next few days were a blur of condolence calls and legal meetings and funeral preparations. Arya moved through it all like a ghost, functioning but not quite present. Lucas stayed close, handling what he could, running interference when people pushed too hard. The funeral was held on a Thursday at a church downtown, massive and imposing, filled with people who'd known Arya's mother professionally but not personally. Lucas sat beside Arya in the front row, Mia on his other side in a black dress Helen had found. The service was formal and cold, full of polite eulogies that said nothing real. When it was over, people approached Arya with carefully practiced sympathy. She accepted it all with grace, her mask firmly in place. But Lucas saw the way her hands trembled, the exhaustion in her eyes. At the reception afterward, held at some venue Lucas didn't recognize, he found her standing alone on a balcony, staring at nothing. You okay? He asked, even though he knew the answer. Patricia told me something about my mother's will. What about it? She left everything to charity. The estate, her personal fortune, all of it. Nothing for me. Lucas wasn't sure what to say. I'm sorry. Don't be. I didn't want her money. I never did. Arya turned to look at him. But there was a letter. For me. Patricia gave it to me an hour ago. Did you read it? Not yet. I'm afraid to. Want me to read it first? She pulled an envelope from her purse, handing it to him. Tell me if it's going to destroy me. Then I'll decide. Lucas opened the envelope carefully and unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. The handwriting was precise, controlled even in what must have been the woman's final days. He read it once, then again, trying to process the words. Well? Arya asked. She apologized. What? Your mother. She apologized for trying to control you, for not seeing what you needed, for letting her own fear turn into cruelty. She said, Lucas looked up at Arya. She said she was proud of you, and that she hoped you'd find happiness, even if she couldn't be part of it. Arya took the letter from him with shaking hands, reading it herself. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't make a sound. I don't know what to do with this, she whispered. You don't have to do anything. Just let yourself feel it. I wanted to hate her. It was easier when I could just hate her. Love and hate aren't opposites. They're neighbors. You can feel both. Arya folded the letter carefully, tucking it back into the envelope. She waited until she was dead to be honest with me. That's so like her. Even apologizing had to be on her terms. At least she apologized. Yeah, at least there's that. They stood on the balcony until the sun set, not talking, just being together. Eventually, Arya took his hand. Take me home, she said. Please. I just want to go home. The weeks after the funeral were strange. Arya threw herself into work, launching the Youth Medical Fund with a fierce determination that seemed equal parts passion and avoidance. She worked late, came home exhausted, fell into bed beside Lucas without saying much. Lucas worried, but he also understood. Grief was weird. It didn't follow rules or timelines, so he gave her space when she needed it and presence when she didn't and tried not to push. Mia, perceptive as always, seemed to sense Arya needed gentleness. She'd climb into Arya's lap in the evenings, not saying anything, just being there. And slowly, incrementally, Arya started to soften again. One Saturday morning, Lucas woke to find the bed empty. He went downstairs and found Arya in his workshop, standing in front of the reading nook he'd built. When did you finish this? She asked. Last week. I was waiting for the right time to show you. She ran her fingers along the wood, tracing the grain. It's beautiful. It's for you, for when you need somewhere to escape. Arya turned to him, and there were tears in her eyes again, but different ones this time. Softer. You built this for me. Yeah. While I was falling apart, you were building me something beautiful. That's what you do when you love someone. You build them spaces to be themselves. She crossed to him, wrapping her arms around his neck. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You took a chance on a desperate carpenter with a sick kid and a mountain of debt. That's what you did. That's not, it is. You gave me a lifeline when I was drowning. And yeah, it started as a transaction, but you kept your promises even when it got messy. You loved my daughter like she was yours. You fought for us when you could have walked away. So don't tell me you don't deserve me because we deserve each other. Arya kissed him then, and it felt like coming home. That afternoon, they installed the reading nook in the alcove off the living room. Mia helped, handing Lucas screws and telling Arya where to arrange the cushions. When it was finished, they all climbed in, a tight fit, but they made it work, and Mia pulled out a book she'd been reading. Read to us, she said, handing it to Arya. So Arya read, her voice steady and warm, while Mia leaned against her and Lucas watched them both. This was it, he thought. This was the life they'd built together, messy and complicated and absolutely real. 2 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Lucas woke to Mia jumping on the bed. Dad! Dad! It's Arya's birthday! Lucas groaned, pulling the pillow over his head. Mia, it's 6 in the morning. I know, we have to make her breakfast before she wakes up. Arya's arm snaked around Lucas's waist from behind. Too late, I'm already awake. Mia squealed, diving under the covers between them. We were going to surprise you. I'm very surprised, and very awake now. They made their way downstairs, Mia still in her pajamas, bouncing with excitement. Helen was already in the kitchen, having been recruited into the conspiracy the night before. Together, they made what could generously be called breakfast. Scrambled eggs that were slightly rubbery, toast that was slightly burnt, and orange juice that was perfect because it came from a carton. Arya ate it all with genuine appreciation, declaring it the best birthday breakfast she'd ever had. That's because you've never had a real birthday breakfast before, Mia said matter-of-factly. Your mom probably made you eat fancy stuff. She did. This is much better. After breakfast, they piled into Lucas's truck. Arya insisted on the truck instead of her sedan and drove to the Furniture Makers Expo downtown. It was Lucas's first time exhibiting his work, and he was nervous in a way he hadn't been since the board meeting. What if nobody likes it? He asked as they unloaded pieces from the truck bed. Then they're idiots with no taste, Arya said, carrying a side table like it weighed nothing. But they're going to love it because it's incredible. The expo was packed, furniture makers from all over the state showing their work. Lucas set up his booth, arranging the pieces he'd brought. The dining table he'd finished months ago, several smaller items, and photos of the reading nook and other custom commissions. People started stopping by almost immediately. They ran their hands over the wood, asked about his process, took his business cards. By noon, Lucas had 3 new commission requests and an offer from a gallery downtown to feature his work. Arya watched it all with undisguised pride, standing to the side with Mia, who was handing out Lucas's cards to anyone who walked by. My dad's the best carpenter ever, she told one older couple. He built a whole reading nook for Arya with secret shelves and everything. The couple smiled, charmed, and took a card. During a lull, Lucas found Arya and Mia eating soft pretzels at a picnic table outside the expo hall. You're a hit, Arya said. I think Mia's doing most of the selling. She gets her sales skills from me. Is that what we're calling it? Arya threw a piece of pretzel at him. Lucas caught it and ate it, grinning. That evening, after they'd packed up and driven home, Lucas made dinner while Arya and Mia decorated the dining room for a proper birthday celebration. Helen had made a cake, chocolate with raspberry filling, Arya's favorite, though she'd never mentioned it, and Lucas suspected Helen had engaged in some investigative questioning. They ate dinner surrounded by streamers and balloons that Mia insisted were necessary. Then came presents, a new set of books from Mia, chosen carefully from the list Arya had been keeping, and from Lucas, a leather portfolio embossed with her initials for the business trips she was always taking. There's one more thing, Lucas said, pulling a small envelope from his pocket. Arya opened it, unfolding the paper inside. Her eyes widened as she read. What is it? Mia asked, trying to see. It's, Arya looked at Lucas. It's a deed to the workshop. I bought the space, Lucas explained. No more renting. It's officially mine, ours. Lucas, how did you? Commissions have been good, really good. And I was saving for something permanent, something that proved I was committed to building a life here. With you. Arya's eyes filled with tears, the happy kind now, the kind that came from being overwhelmed with love. Thank you. For this, for today, for everything. Happy birthday, Arya. They cut the cake, Mia insisting on giving Arya the biggest piece, and spent the rest of the evening in the living room talking about nothing important. When Mia finally crashed from her sugar high, Lucas carried her up to bed while Arya cleaned up the kitchen. He found her there later, standing at the sink, staring out the window at the backyard where the pool glowed blue in the dark. Thinking about something? He asked. About a year ago, when I was planning this whole arrangement, I remember standing in my office, looking at your file, thinking you were perfect because you'd never complicate things. You'd just take the money and play the part and leave when it was over. And instead, I fell in love with you and complicated everything. Yeah, best complication of my life. She turned to face him. I've been thinking about what my mother wrote. In her letter. About finding happiness, even if she couldn't be part of it. And I think I finally understand what she meant. She spent her whole life trying to control everything, to make sure nothing went wrong. But you can't control love. You can't plan it or arrange it or make it fit into neat boxes. You just have to let it happen. Is that what we did? Just let it happen? No, we fought it. Both of us, every step of the way. But it happened anyway. Because some things are bigger than our plans. Lucas pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. I'm glad I complicated your life. Me too. They stood like that for a while, swaying slightly to music only they could hear. Then Arya pulled back, her expression shifting to something more serious. I have something to tell you, something I've been waiting for the right moment to say. Lucas felt a flicker of worry. Okay. The Youth Medical Fund, it's launching next month, full rollout, nationwide. We're partnering with 6 major hospitals and setting aside $50 million for the first year. Arya, that's amazing. And I'm stepping back from the Sustainable Development Division, not leaving entirely, but reducing my role. I want to run the fund full-time, make it my focus. Lucas studied her face. Are you sure? You've worked so hard to build that division. I have, and I'm proud of it. But this feels more important. This is helping kids like Mia. Kids whose parents are making impossible choices because they can't afford treatment. I want to be the person who says, you don't have to choose. I want to do what you would have given anything for someone to do for you. You already did that. For us. I know. And now I want to do it for everyone else. Lucas kissed her forehead. Then do it. I'm behind you completely. Even though it means I'll be traveling more, meeting with hospital administrators and families and donors. Even then, as long as you come home to us. Always. 3 months later, on a cold December afternoon, Lucas stood in the workshop putting finishing touches on a custom order, a crib for a couple expecting twins. Through the window, he could see the house, lights glowing warm against the winter dusk. Arya's car was in the driveway, which meant she was home early from her trip to Chicago. He packed up his tools and headed inside, finding Mia at the kitchen table doing homework while Helen prepared dinner. Arya was upstairs, presumably changing out of her travel clothes. How was your trip? He called up the stairs. Come up here. I need to talk to you. Lucas climbed the stairs, trying to read her tone, and failing. He found her sitting on the bed, still in her suit, holding something in her hands. Everything okay? He asked. She looked up at him, and he saw tears on her face. Happy tears. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air for a moment while Lucas processed them. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. Yeah, about 8 weeks. I found out this morning, but I wanted to tell you in person. Lucas pulled back to look at her, his hands on her shoulders. How do you feel about it? Terrified? Excited? Both at the same time. I know we didn't plan this. Some of the best things in our life weren't planned. She laughed, wiping her eyes. That's true. Does Mia know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first, but we should tell her together. They found Mia still at the kitchen table, tongue poking out in concentration as she worked through a math problem. She looked up when they approached, immediately reading their expressions. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing's wrong," Arya said, sitting down next to her. "Actually, something's very right. You're going to be a big sister." Mia's eyes went wide. "Really? Really? Like a real sister? With a baby?" Lucas laughed. "Yeah, sweetheart, a real baby." Mia erupted into excited questions. When? What gender? What names they were considering? Could she help pick out baby clothes? Arya answered each one patiently while Lucas watched, feeling his heart swell with a happiness so complete it was almost frightening. This was his life now, not the one he'd planned, not the one he could have imagined a year ago when he was drowning in debt and desperation, but the one he'd built, messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. That night, after Mia finally calmed down enough to sleep, Lucas and Arya lay in bed talking about the future, about how they'd convert one of the spare rooms into a nursery, about maternity leave and childcare and all the logistics that came with expanding their family. "Are you scared?" Arya asked. "A little. You?" "More than a little. I don't know how to be a mother. I never had a good example." "You've been mothering Mia for months now. You're already doing it." "That's different. Mia was already a person. She could tell me what she needed. A baby. A baby we'll figure out together. Just like we've figured out everything else." Arya rolled onto her side, facing him. "When you showed up at my office that first day, you looked at me like I was crazy. Like I was offering you the worst deal in the world. I thought you were crazy. And now? Now I think you're the best thing that ever happened to me, crazy included." She smiled, and it was unguarded and genuine, the smile she'd learned to give freely over the past months, the one that told Lucas she felt safe. "I love you. I love you too." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, and Lucas dreamed of a future full of noise and chaos and love. The months that followed were a whirlwind. Arya's medical fund launched to widespread acclaim, the first families already receiving support. Lucas's workshop business exploded, forcing him to hire an apprentice to keep up with demand. Mia thrived in school, bringing home artwork and stories and a confidence Lucas had worried she'd never develop. And Arya's belly grew, carrying their future. In April, on a rainy Tuesday morning, Arya's water broke while she was on a conference call with a hospital in Seattle. Lucas got the call while he was in the workshop teaching his apprentice the proper way to join two pieces of wood without visible hardware. "It's time," Arya said, her voice tight. "I'm at the office, but I'm leaving now, Shah. Stay there. I'm coming to get you. Don't move." He made it downtown in record time, finding Arya in her office with Patricia and two other board members hovering anxiously. She was breathing through contractions, gripping the edge of her desk, and when she saw Lucas, relief flooded her face. "Let's go," he said, taking her arm. "I have the presentation for the Denver meeting." "Patricia can handle Denver. We're having a baby." The drive to the hospital was tense, Arya's contractions getting closer together. Lucas ran 2 red lights and didn't care. They made it to the maternity ward with time to spare, and then it was just waiting. Mia arrived an hour later with Helen, clutching a stuffed elephant she'd picked out for her new sibling. She sat with Lucas in the waiting room, swinging her legs and asking questions he didn't have answers to. "Is Arya okay?" "She's okay, sweetheart." "Does it hurt?" "Probably, but she's strong." "Will the baby like me?" Lucas pulled her close. "The baby's gonna love you, because you're going to be the best big sister ever." 8 hours later, a nurse came to get him. He followed her to the delivery room where Arya lay exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. "It's a boy," she said, her voice hoarse. "We have a son." Lucas felt tears streaming down his face as he crossed to the bed. Arya handed him the baby, and he looked down at the tiny scrunched face, the miniature hands, the perfect tiny human they'd made together. "He's beautiful," Lucas whispered. "He has your nose." "Poor kid," Arya laughed, exhausted and happy. "What should we name him?" They'd discussed names for months, never quite settling on one, but looking at his son, Lucas knew immediately. "James, after your dad." Arya's eyes filled with tears. "You do that? Even after everything with my family?" "He was your father, and whatever else he was, he raised a daughter who turned into the most incredible woman I know. That's worth honoring." James Reed. I like it. They brought Mia in a few minutes later. She approached the bed cautiously, eyes wide, then broke into the biggest smile Lucas had ever seen. "He's so tiny," she whispered. "You were that tiny once," Lucas said. "Can I hold him?" Arya helped position James in Mia's arms, supporting his head, and Lucas watched his daughter become a sister right before his eyes. "Hi, James," Mia said softly. "I'm Mia. I'm your big sister. I'm going to teach you everything. How to swim and how to build things with Dad and how to make Arya laugh. You're really lucky, you know. We're a pretty good family." Lucas looked at Arya, who was watching Mia with an expression of pure love, and felt something settle deep in his chest. A year and a half ago, he'd been a desperate single father making impossible choices. Now he was standing in a hospital room, watching his two children meet for the first time, with the woman he loved more than he thought possible. Life didn't follow neat plans. It twisted and turned and took you places you never expected. But sometimes, if you were brave enough to let go of control, if you were willing to take chances on people who seemed all wrong, you ended up somewhere better than anything you could have planned. 3 days later, they brought James home. The house filled with the sounds of a newborn, crying at odd hours, the soft coos when he was content, Mia's whispered conversations with her brother. Arya navigated new motherhood with the same fierce determination she brought to everything else, though Lucas caught her crying in the nursery more than once from exhaustion and overwhelming love. "I don't know what I'm doing," she admitted one night at 3 a.m, rocking James while he fussed. "None of us do. We're all just making it up as we go." "You make it look easy." "That's because you've never seen me completely panicked on the inside." She laughed softly, and James finally settled, his eyes drifting closed. They stood there together in the dim light of the nursery, swaying slightly, and Lucas thought about all the versions of their life that could have been. The one where Arya's contract expired and they went their separate ways. The one where her mother succeeded in tearing them apart. The one where Lucas's pride kept him from accepting help. But this was the version they'd chosen, the one they'd fought for. The messy, complicated, absolutely real version where love wasn't something you planned or controlled, but something you built day by day, choice by choice, with imperfect people doing their best. 6 months later, on a Saturday afternoon in October, they gathered in the backyard for Mia's 8th birthday party. The pool was full of her classmates, shrieking and splashing, while parents clustered around tables laden with food Helen had spent all morning preparing. James sat in a bouncer under an umbrella, watching the chaos with wide eyes. Lucas manned the grill, flipping burgers while Arya worked the crowd, making sure everyone had drinks and answering questions about the medical fund, which had just expanded to 12 states. She was in her element, confident, engaged, making a difference in ways that mattered. Patricia found Lucas at the grill, a glass of wine in her hand. "Quite a year you've had." "That's putting it mildly. For what it's worth, I'm glad things worked out. Arya's happier than I've ever seen her. You're good for her." "She's good for me too. Good for all of us." Patricia smiled. "Your furniture's beautiful, by the way. I saw the piece you made for the hospital lobby. Arya showed me photos." "Thanks. It was a fun project." "She's been telling everyone that her husband is an artist. Won't shut up about it, actually. It's charming." Lucas felt heat creep up his neck. "She exaggerates." "Does she?" "Because from where I'm standing, you've built something remarkable here. A business, a family, a life. That takes artistry of a different kind." After Patricia drifted away, Arya appeared at his side, stealing a piece of grilled pineapple from the platter. "Hey, no sampling. I'm quality control." She leaned against him, watching Mia cannonball into the pool. "This is good, isn't it? This life we made?" "Yeah, it's really good. Even with the 3 a.m. feedings and the mountains of diapers and your apprentice accidentally breaking your favorite chisel last week?" "Even with all that?" Arya was quiet for a moment, then said, "I've been thinking about something." "Should I be worried?" "Maybe. I want to sell the house." Lucas nearly dropped his spatula. "What?" "Not right away, but eventually. This place, it's beautiful, but it was never really mine. It was something my mother approved of, something that fit the image. I want us to build something together, literally. Design it, build it, make it ours from the ground up." "That's a massive undertaking." "I know. but you could design the workshop space exactly how you want it. And I could have an office for the foundation work, and Mia could have input on her room, and we could make sure James's nursery gets perfect morning light. It would be ours, Lucas. Not mine or yours, but ours. Lucas considered this, turning the idea over in his mind. Building a house from scratch, starting fresh, creating something that represented who they'd become rather than who they'd been. It was terrifying and exciting in equal measure. Okay, he said. Let's do it. Really? Really? On one condition. What's that? We keep the reading nook. I worked too hard on that thing to leave it behind. Arya laughed, the sound bright and genuine. Deal. That evening, after the last guest had left and Mia had opened all her presents and James was asleep upstairs, Lucas found Arya sitting in the reading nook, feet tucked under her, looking at house plans on her tablet. Already planning? He asked. I made a Pinterest board. Of course you did. He climbed in beside her, and she showed him the design she'd been collecting. Farmhouse modern, lots of windows, open floor plans. They talked about square footage and lot locations and whether they wanted a basement or just really good storage. What about the backyard? Arya asked. Pool or no pool? Pool. Mia loves swimming, and James will too. Garden? Definitely. You've been getting really into that. She smiled, bookmarking a photo of a vegetable garden with raised beds. I like growing things. It's satisfying. You're good at it. Growing things, building things, making things work. You're good at all of it. Arya set down the tablet, turning to look at him. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You know that, right? The fund, the confidence to stand up to my mother, the courage to build a real life instead of the one I thought I was supposed to have. You gave me that. No, you had it all along. I just helped you see it. Then we helped each other see it. Yeah, I guess we did. They sat in comfortable silence, the house quiet around them. Through the window, Lucas could see the pool, its surface still and reflective under the night sky. He thought about the first time he'd seen this house, how intimidating and foreign it had felt, how he'd thought he'd never belong in a place like this. He'd been right. He didn't belong here. But that was okay, because they were going to build somewhere he did belong, somewhere they both did, somewhere their children would grow up surrounded by love and laughter and the kind of imperfect, messy happiness that came from people choosing each other every day. Lucas? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For taking the deal, for showing up, for loving me even when I made it difficult. Loving you was never difficult. Admitting I loved you, maybe. But the actual loving part? That was easy. Arya kissed him, and it tasted like home. Like promises kept and futures built, and all the beautiful complications that came with building a life with someone. 2 years later, they stood in the driveway of their new house, not quite finished, but livable, watching movers unload boxes from a truck. The house was everything they'd planned, and more. Sprawling but warm, full of windows and wood and spaces designed for living, not impressing. Lucas's workshop sat separate from the main house, perfectly situated with north-facing windows for consistent light. Arya's office had a view of the garden she'd been planning for months. Mia, now 10, directed the movers with the authority of someone 3 times her age. That box goes to my room, the blue one. Yes, that's it. James toddled around the yard investigating rocks and flowers with the serious curiosity of a 2-year-old. He looked like Lucas. Same dark hair, same stubborn jaw, but he had Arya's intelligence, already speaking in full sentences and asking questions that shouldn't be possible for someone so small. This is it, Arya said, taking Lucas's hand. Our forever house. No takebacks? No takebacks. They watched the movers work, watched their children explore, watched the sun set behind the house they'd built together. Lucas thought about the contract they'd signed all those years ago, about the desperate arrangement that was supposed to end after 6 months, about how the best things in life were the ones you couldn't plan for. He'd gone into that office looking for a lifeline, willing to sell himself to save his daughter. He'd come out with a contract, a wife, and a future he couldn't have imagined. The contract was long gone, burned to ash in a fireplace in a house that was no longer theirs. But what remained was something no piece of paper could capture, a family built on choice, on showing up, on loving each other through complications and grief and joy. Arya leaned her head on his shoulder. We did good, didn't we? Yeah, we did really good. Inside the house, Helen was already organizing the kitchen, muttering about where things should go. She'd insisted on making the move with them, declaring that they needed her more than ever with 2 children and a new house to manage. She was right, of course. She was family now, as much a part of their lives as anyone. That night, they ordered pizza and ate it sitting on the floor of the empty living room, boxes stacked around them like a cardboard fortress. Mia told stories about her new school, which she'd start in 2 weeks. James fell asleep in Arya's lap, exhausted from a day of exploration. I have something for you, Lucas said, standing and digging through one of the nearby boxes. He pulled out a small wrapped package and handed it to Arya. What's this? Open it. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a framed photograph, the first picture ever taken of the 3 of them together the day after their courthouse wedding. Lucas looked uncomfortable in his new suit, Arya was smiling but guarded, and Mia stood between them holding her bouquet, grinning like she knew something they didn't. Look at us, Arya said softly. We had no idea what we were doing. Still don't most days, but we're doing it together. Always together. They hung the photo in the entryway the next day, the first decoration in their new house. A reminder of where they'd started, how far they'd come, and all the imperfect, beautiful choices that had brought them here. Because real wealth, Lucas had learned, wasn't something you inherited or earned or married into. It was something you built with your own hands, day by day, choice by choice, with people who stayed even when things got hard. It was Mia's laughter echoing through rooms designed for living. It was James's tiny hand wrapped around his finger. It was Arya falling asleep beside him every night, safe and loved, and finally believing she deserved both. It was this house, this family, this life they'd constructed from nothing but desperation and hope, and a willingness to let go of control long enough to see what they could become. Lucas Reed had walked into a glass tower 18 months ago looking for a miracle. What he'd found instead was something better, a chance to build one himself. And in the end, that was the only kind of miracle that mattered.